You weakling, you cannot even hold a gun. Stone's boot had already sent the rifle skidding across the concrete before the words finished leaving his mouth. The weapon crashed against the floor like a gunshot. 400 soldiers froze. He stepped directly into her face, chest forward, jaw set, using every inch of his 6'3" frame as a weapon. His voice was not angry. It was worse than angry. It was certain, contemptuous. The voice of a man who had already decided the verdict before the trial began. She was 5'2", 118 pounds. She was wearing a Navy SEAL trident, and Marcus Stone had just lit the fuse on his own destruction. Before we go any further, please subscribe to our channel and follow this story all the way to the end. Drop a comment telling us what city you're watching from. I want to see exactly how far this story travels. The morning air at Naval Special Warfare Command in Little Creek, Virginia, bit like a living thing. December cold, 5:30 in the morning, temperature hovering just above freezing, the kind of cold that found every gap in your clothing and made itself at home. Lieutenant Sarah Morgan was on her 200th push-up, and she hadn't broken rhythm once. Her arms burned. Her lungs ached with every breath she pulled from that frozen air. But her face showed nothing, absolutely nothing. Her father had taught her that years ago, sitting on the back porch of their San Diego home watching the Pacific throw itself against the rocks below. When they try to get a reaction from you, he'd said, you give them nothing. You are stone, you are water, you are air. Stone, water, air. She repeated it now like a prayer, pushing through the burn, through the cold, through the part of the morning that wanted to break her. Around her, 16 Navy SEALs mirrored her movements. Up, down, up, down. The cadence of warriors, the rhythm of men who had earned their tridents through hell itself, and one woman who had done the same. When Master Chief Thomas Reed's whistle cut through the dawn, Sarah rose smoothly. Not a single tremor in her arms, not a single wobble in her legs. She'd learned years ago that the slightest shake would invite questions, and questions invited doubt, and doubt in this world was a cancer that spread fast and killed even faster. Petty Officer First Class Danny Chen materialized at her side. They'd been swim buddies through buds. He'd watched her push through Hell Week when men twice her size had walked up to that brass bell and rung it. Men who'd cried when they quit. Danny had never seen Sarah cry, not once. You hear about the Rangers, he asked quietly, keeping his eyes forward. What about them? 7 of them coming today, 3 weeks of joint training, cross-branch integration. Sarah reached for her water bottle, drank, said nothing. Their team leader is Marcus Stone. Danny let that hang between them. Sarah still said nothing. You know the name? He pressed. I know the name, she said. Everyone in special operations knows the name. She knew more than just the name. Staff Sergeant First Class Marcus Stone. 15 years in Army Rangers. 6 combat deployments. Golden Gloves boxing champion. 3-time winner of the All-Army Combatives Championship. And according to every story she'd ever heard, traded in every hallway and mess hall from Fort Benning to Little Creek, the loudest, most vocal, most publicly committed opponent of women in combat roles in the entire United States military. He hadn't just held that opinion privately, he'd taken it to Congress. Twice. Sat before committees, used his medals and his record and his granite jaw as weapons against women like her. Sarah had read the transcripts. Every word, the rumble of engines killed whatever Danny was about to say next. 3 olive-drab transport vehicles rolled through the main gate with that particular arrogance that military vehicles carry when they know they belong somewhere. United States Army Rangers insignia on their doors. Sarah felt the temperature in the formation drop by 10 degrees. SEALs and Rangers had a complicated relationship. Mutual respect wrapped in a rivalry that never quite cooled each branch, absolutely certain. They were tougher, more elite, more deserving of the title warrior. It was the kind of rivalry that sharpened everyone involved and occasionally resulted in somebody getting carried out of a bar in a city neither of them should have been drinking in. The vehicles stopped. Doors opened. 7 men emerged, and they carried themselves the way Rangers always did, like gravity was more of a suggestion than a rule. Like jumping out of perfectly good aircraft at 3 in the morning was just something you did on a Tuesday. Sarah recognized Marcus Stone before she even consciously processed what she was seeing. It was the way the other 6 men arranged themselves around him, not behind him, not beside him, but orbiting him the way planets orbit something with more mass, 6'3", maybe 210 pounds, shoulders like structural supports, a jaw that looked like it had been quarried from the same granite they used to build monuments. He scanned the assembled SEALs like a general surveying freshly conquered territory. His eyes moved across the formation with the systematic efficiency of a man who had been professionally assessing threats for 15 years. He cataloged, he measured, he filed things away. Then his gaze found Sarah. It stopped. His lip curled. Just barely. Just enough. Master Chief Reed approached, hand-extended, voice professionally warm. Master Chief Thomas Reed, welcome to Little Creek. Stone shook the hand. His eyes never left Sarah. Staff Sergeant First Class Marcus Stone, appreciate the hospitality. His voice carried across the parade ground like it had been designed specifically to carry across parade grounds. Parade ground volume, the kind of voice that wanted everyone within 100 yards to hear every syllable. Your team ready to train? Reed asked. My team's always ready. Stone finally looked at Reed. Question is whether your team is ready for us. His gaze slid back to Sarah like water finding a drain. All of your team. The formation went quiet. 30 men suddenly discovering fascinating things to examine in the sky, on the ground, in the middle distance. Anywhere that wasn't the confrontation unfolding in front of them. Reed's face went carefully blank. All of my team, Staff Sergeant. Stone smiled. Not friendly, not even close to friendly. He started walking toward the formation. Slow, deliberate, his boots crunching frozen gravel with each step like punctuation. Like he was building towards something sentence by sentence. He stopped directly in front of Sarah. Close enough to invade her personal space. Close enough that she had to tilt her head back to meet his eyes. What's your rate, sailor? Not lieutenant, not ma'am. The deliberate disrespect of ignoring her rank entirely, as if her insignia were invisible, as if she were nobody. Sarah met his eyes, level, calm, the steel her mother had forged and her father had tempered. Lieutenant Sarah Morgan, SEAL Team 3. Stone dragged the word out like he was tasting something and finding it wrong. SEAL. He turned the word into a thing with edges, made it sound like a verdict. And how long have you been playing SEAL, Lieutenant? 18 months, Staff Sergeant. 18. Stone whistled low. Slow, the theatrical surprise of a man who'd rehearsed this. He shook his head like a teacher who'd just seen a student fail at something embarrassingly simple. He turned to his Rangers and raised his voice another notch. Boys, we got ourselves a veteran here. 18 months, practically a war hero. Laughter from the Rangers, uncertain silence from the SEALs. Stone turned back to Sarah. His smile widened. Tell me something, Lieutenant. They make buds easier for you. Lower those obstacle walls. Maybe let you skip the cold water evolution, extra blankets during Hell Week. Sarah's jaw tightened. The only movement she allowed herself. Same course, same standards, same Hell Week. Sure, he nodded with exaggerated understanding. I believe that, I really do. Same standards, no political pressure, no diversity quotas, no senators making phone calls. He leaned closer, close enough that only she could hear his next words. Try not to break a nail, sweetheart. It's only 3 weeks. The words hit like a physical blow. Sarah's hands curled into fists at her sides. Every muscle in her body screamed at her to react, to move, to wipe that smug, calculated expression off his face with a right cross that would rearrange the architecture of his jaw and let him know exactly who he was dealing with. But she was stone. She was water. She was air. Yes, Staff Sergeant. Stone's smile flickered. He'd expected something, an outburst, a flinch, a tremor in the voice, something he could use, something he could point at later and say, see, this is what I've been talking about. This is why it doesn't work. She gave him nothing. He leaned in again, even closer. I've seen a lot of women try to play soldier, Lieutenant. They all wash out eventually. Some of them get hurt first. Some of them get other people hurt. But they all quit, every single one. I haven't quit, Staff Sergeant. Yet. He straightened, raised his voice again for the audience he'd never stopped playing to. You haven't quit yet, but we've got 3 weeks. Plenty of time for nature to take its course. He turned and walked toward Reed without another glance at her, dismissing her as completely as if she had already ceased to exist. My Rangers are ready to train, Master Chief, assuming we're here to actually train and not to babysit. Reed's voice was controlled in the way that steel cables are controlled. Tremendous tension held in check by engineering. We're here to train Staff Sergeant. Let's get your team squared away. The formation broke. Rangers moving toward their assigned barracks, easy and confident trading jokes. SEALs dispersing quieter than usual, more careful. Sarah held her position until everyone else had moved. Danny appeared beside her. Sarah, don't. Don't what? Don't let him get to you. He's doing this on purpose. This is what he does. Danny. He wants a reaction. Any reaction. That's how he wins. Danny. What? I know. She walked away. Not toward the barracks, toward the beach. She needed to run. She needed the frozen sand under her feet and the gray water in front of her and the wind that didn't care about any of this. She needed to remember why she was here. She needed her father. The ocean was furious that morning, whitecaps crashing against the shore with the blind determination of something that will never ever stop. The wind cut through her PT clothes like they weren't there. Sarah started running, hard, feet hitting the sand with each stride like she was trying to pound something into the earth or pull something out of it. Her father had loved this beach. Master Chief David Morgan, SEAL Team 6, 22 years of service, 6 deployments, 3 Bronze Stars, 1 Silver Star, dead at 44. Sarah had been 20 years old when the officers came to the door with the flag folded into a triangle. She remembered every detail of that moment with the terrible precision that trauma burns into memory. The doorbell, her mother's face going white, the words that destroyed her world and rearranged it at the same time. Killed in action, Aleppo, Syria, March 15, 2019. The official report said he'd been leading a hostage rescue. 12 American aid workers captured by ISIS. Her father's team had gotten 9 of them out, but the extraction went bad. Ambush, overwhelming force. Her father had stayed behind to cover the retreat, had held off 30 enemy fighters for 13 minutes, long enough for the helicopters to get away. Long enough for 9 hostages and 11 SEALs to survive. They'd found his body 2 days later. 4 broken ribs, dislocated shoulder, 17 bullet wounds. He'd kept fighting even after his weapon ran dry. Kept fighting with his hands. Kept fighting until there was nothing left to fight with. The Navy had given him the Medal of Honor. Posthumous. Sarah's mother had accepted it at the White House. Sarah had worn her dress blues and kept her face exactly the way her father had taught her to keep it. Stone, water, air. She'd been crying ever since. She stopped running, stood at the water's edge and let the freezing waves wash over her feet. The cold was clarifying, almost painful enough to chase the other pain away. Her phone buzzed, text from Danny. Training starts Iro 800. Stone requested you specifically for the demonstration. Be careful. Sarah stared at the words. Requested you specifically. Of course he had. She was the point he wanted to make. She was the example he was going to use to prove everything he'd spent years arguing before Congress and in locker rooms and in the kind of conversations that men like Stone had when they thought no one important was listening. She looked at the horizon. Somewhere beyond that gray water, her father had died. Somewhere beyond that, watermen still needed saving. Missions still needed completing. People were alive today because someone went when it was hard, when it was dangerous, when every rational calculation said to stay behind. And here she was having to prove herself to a man who had decided she was worthless before he'd ever seen her fight. Her father's voice surfaced in her memory. The last conversation they'd ever had the night before his final deployment, sitting in the kitchen at 2 a.m, him with coffee, her with tea, both of them pretending this was a normal thing and that he would absolutely be coming back. You're going to face people who doubt you, baby girl, he'd said. People who look at your size and see weakness. People who look at your gender and see limitations. What do I do? She'd asked. Let them. Let them underestimate you. That's their weakness, not yours. But what if they're right? She'd been younger then, more afraid to ask the question. What if I'm not strong enough? Her father had smiled, that warm, steady, irreplaceable smile. Strength isn't about how much weight you can lift, Sarah. It's about how much weight you can carry. And you, my girl, can carry more than anyone I've ever met. You just don't know it yet. Sarah wiped salt spray from her face, looked down at the dog tags hanging at her chest. His dog tags. She'd worn them every single day since the funeral. I'm trying, Dad, she whispered. The ocean didn't answer, but somewhere in the sound of it, she could almost feel him listening. The training bay at exactly 0800 was already charged with something electric and dangerous. SEALs on one side, Rangers on the other, the invisible line between them as clear as any wall either side had ever built. Stone stood in the center, talking to his men, moving his hands in the broad gestures of a man who has spent his entire life commanding the attention of rooms. Master Chief Reed caught Sarah's eye as she entered, a barely perceptible nod. Whatever Stone had planned, Reed would be watching. Stone called the room to attention precisely at 0800. "Good morning, ladies and gentlemen." He paused on that word, let it do its work. "Today we begin 3 weeks of joint training. The goal is interoperability, learning to work together, learning to fight together." He started pacing, slow, methodical. "But before we can work together, we need to establish baselines. We need to know what everyone brings to the table. We need to know who can actually perform." His eyes found Sarah across the room, and who might need some extra attention. A few Rangers chuckled. Stone silenced them with a look that said, this was serious, this was professional. They were not here to laugh. He wanted everyone to understand the severity of the problem he was about to demonstrate. "First assessment," he announced, "small arms qualification, rifle and pistol, standard Army course of fire. Any objections?" No one spoke. "Outstanding, let's head to the range." Walking to the range, Sarah could hear Stone talking to his Rangers behind her. He wasn't lowering his voice. He wasn't trying to hide it. "Watch this," he said. "I want everyone to see exactly what happens when politics puts the wrong people in the wrong jobs. I want this to be a lesson, not just a demonstration." Danny walked faster to stay beside Sarah. "Want me to say something?" "No. He's doing this out loud on purpose. He wants you to react." "I know. So how do you not—" "Practice," Sarah said. "A lot of practice." At the range, Stone went first, made a show of it the way skilled performers make a show of everything, with apparent ease, with the casual confidence of someone who has done something so many times that competence looks effortless. He fired 40 rounds at the rifle targets, 38 hits, 2 misses at 300 meters. Then the pistol, 20 rounds, 18 hits, 90% accuracy. Stone stepped back from the line with a satisfied proprietary smile. "That's what 14 years of practice looks like. Let's see what 18 months can do." He gestured to Sarah. The range went quiet, not gradually quiet, not respectfully quiet, instantly quiet, the kind of silence that a room produces when everyone in it is holding their breath for the same reason. Sarah stepped up to the firing line. She could feel every eye, SEALs and Rangers both. She picked up the M4. The weight was familiar, a conversation she'd been having with this particular rifle for thousands of training hours. She'd fired this weapon in every condition the military could devise, in rain, in cold, in exhaustion, in pain, in simulated combat, in actual combat. She knew it the way she knew her own hands. Stone was watching, waiting. She settled into her stance, let her breathing slow, found that place inside where everything simplified down to the fundamentals. Her father teaching her in a field in San Diego when she was 8 years old, a rifle almost as tall as she was. "Don't fight the gun, baby girl. The gun is part of you. When you squeeze the trigger, you're not firing a weapon. You're extending your will into the world." Sarah extended her will. The first target fell at 300 meters. She moved to the next without pause, and the next, and the next. 40 rounds, 40 hits, no misses, no hesitation. She transitioned to the pistol without stopping. Let the muscle memory carry her. 20 rounds, 20 hits, 100%. She safed the weapon, stepped back from the line. The range officer's voice broke the silence. "Time 3 minutes, 47 seconds. Perfect. That's the fastest qualification I've seen in 6 years." Stone recovered fast, practiced recovery, the kind that comes from years of never wanting anyone to see you rattled. "Nice shooting, Lieutenant, but anyone can hit paper. Combat is different. When real bullets come back, when the pressure is real, when everything is falling apart around you." He shrugged, easy and dismissive. "We'll see who performs and who freezes." Sarah said nothing, held his gaze. Stone's smile returned. "Tomorrow we'll try something more challenging. See how you do when the stakes are a little higher." He walked away without waiting for a response. Danny appeared at her side. "That was incredible. You literally destroyed his score." "Doesn't matter." "What do you mean it doesn't matter? You just—" "He's not going to stop because of evidence, Danny. Sarah started breaking down her rifle, muscle memory again, hands moving without needing instructions from her brain. Men like him don't change their minds because of evidence. They just move the goalposts. They find a new reason. So what do? Sarah pulled the bolt carrier group and checked it for carbon buildup. You keep performing, you be so undeniable that they run out of goalposts. She looked at Danny. And if they won't stop trying to break you? What? She thought of her father, of the 13 minutes in Aleppo, of the 17 bullet wounds. Then you break them first. The next 12 days unfolded like a masterclass in psychological warfare. Stone was relentless, methodical. He had clearly done this before, had a map of the territory, and knew exactly which routes to take. Every training evolution, every briefing, every meal. The comments came. Day 2 combat water survival. Full gear 60-pound ruck weapons, 3-mile ocean swim in 48-degree water. Sarah had grown up swimming in the Pacific, had learned during Hell Week to make peace with cold water, to stop fighting it and let it become simply another condition to work within. She finished the swim 9 minutes ahead of the next fastest time, emerged from the surf breathing hard but controlled. Stone was waiting on the beach. Lucky current today. Probably helped being so small. Less drag in the water. Sarah wrung water from her hair. Yes, Staff Sergeant. Day 5 land navigation, 20-kilometer course through the swamps of Virginia. No GPS, map and compass and training. Sarah completed it 40 minutes faster than anyone else, found all 12 waypoints without a single error. Stone reviewed her time log, shook his head like he was reading something unfortunate. Someone must have marked the course wrong. No way anyone covers that terrain that fast. Especially not someone with those short little legs. Sarah said nothing. Day 8 close quarter battle drills, live fire, real ammunition. 8 rooms breached 47 targets, engaged 0 civilian casualties, 0 friendly fire incidents. Completion time, 1 minute 4 seconds. Textbook perfect. Stone watched the video footage with crossed arms. Anyone can shoot cardboard. Real combat is different. When there's blood and screaming and your friends dying around you, instinct takes over. His eyes found Sarah across the room. Women aren't wired for violence, it's biology. When it gets real, they freeze every time. His second-in-command, Corporal Williams, nodded from nearby. They called him tiny as a joke, 6'5", 250 pounds. It's just science, ma'am, no offense. Sarah was cleaning her weapon 15 feet away. She heard every word. She said nothing, but she remembered. She was still remembering on day 11 when they walked into the gym for hand-to-hand combat training, and she understood immediately from the moment she saw the arrangement of the room and the composition of the gathered crowd that something was different. This wasn't a normal training day. This was a performance. Stone had been building toward this since day 1. The gym was packed, every operator from both services, crash mats covering the floor, the smell of sweat and anticipation thick in the air. SEAL instructor Master Chief Peterson at the front. 22 years of combatives training. 3 of the manuals they all used had his name on the cover. I need 2 volunteers, Peterson called. 1 experienced grappler, 1 striker. We're going to demonstrate integrated techniques. Before Sarah could fully process the room, Stone's voice boomed from across it. I volunteer Lieutenant Morgan. The silence that followed was the kind that precedes something significant. Sarah turned. Stone was smiling, the same smile from day 1 extended, now perfected over 11 days. Come on, Lieutenant. Show us what female SEAL standards really mean. I'm curious. We're all curious. Peterson frowned. Staff Sergeant, I don't think... No disrespect, Master Chief, but we're supposed to be training together, right? Cross-branch integration. Let's integrate. Stone gestured to one of his rangers stepping forward from the group. Corporal Derek Hayes, 3rd-degree black belt in Taekwondo. He'll be gentle. Hayes was 5'9", maybe 170, lean and flexible, with the easy confidence of someone who has trained long enough to stop being afraid of most physical confrontations. He grinned at Sarah. I'll go easy, ma'am. Wouldn't want you getting hurt. Peterson looked at Sarah. His expression said he knew exactly what this was. Political theater, a setup, a demonstration designed not to teach anything, but to prove a point that Stone had been trying to make for 11 straight days. He gave her a barely perceptible nod. Your call. Sarah stepped onto the mat. No ceremony, no warm-up ritual, no checking in with the audience, just one step forward into whatever came next. All right, Peterson said. We'll do a light demonstration, 20% speed, just technique. Nah. Stone's voice cut across the room like a blade. Let's make it real. Full speed, full contact. We're warriors, not dancers. Let's see what a seal can actually do. The gym went completely silent. Not just quiet, silent. The kind that 60 people in a room can produce when every single one of them realizes they're witnessing something that matters. Peterson looked at Sarah. Lieutenant, you comfortable with full contact? Sarah looked at Hayes, analyzed his stance, his weight distribution, the slight forward lean of a kicker, the loose shoulders of someone who trusted his striking. She cataloged everything in 3 seconds. Yes, Master Chief, full contact is fine. Hayes' grin widened. He bounced on the balls of his feet, already planning the highlight reel in his head. Peterson raised his arm. Ready, fight. Hayes exploded forward immediately. Textbook taekwondo. A faint jab followed by a spinning back kick aimed at Sarah's head. The kick was fast and committed and would have looked spectacular on camera. Sarah wasn't there. She'd seen the spin coming the moment. Hayes shifted his weight, seen the telegraphed rotation of his hips that gave away everything that was about to happen. The spin was committed. Inertia. No way to adjust mid-motion. She stepped inside this arc. Let his momentum carry him past her like a wave she'd simply declined to stand in front of. Hayes completed his spin, slightly off balance, his foot landing where Sarah had been standing half a second ago. He looked for her. She was behind him. She hooked his lead leg with her foot. Simple sweep, a mechanical application of his own forward momentum. Hayes' eyes went wide as his balance disappeared and the floor came up to meet him. He hit the mat hard back, slamming into the canvas with a sound like something cracking. Sarah dropped into side control before he finished bouncing. Hayes was good. He immediately tried to bridge, tried to create space, tried to get back to his feet. But Sarah had already trapped his arm, legs wrapped around his neck and shoulder in a textbook arm triangle choke. His other arm came up the obvious defense, pushing against her shoulder. She used that momentum, rolled them both, ended up mounted on his chest, the arm triangle locked deeper now, her shoulder pressing into his neck, his own shoulder pressing into the other side. The carotid arteries compressed. Blood flowed to the brain, cutting off like someone turning a switch. Hayes' eyes went wide. He tried to buck. He tried to push. He tried every escape he knew. Nothing worked. His face turned red, then purple. He tapped. 3 quick slaps against the mat. Sarah, released, immediately rolled off him, rose to her feet. Hayes gasped and coughed on the ground, hands at his throat, working through what had just happened to him. 14 seconds. Start to finish. Sarah extended her hand. After a moment, Hayes took it. She pulled him to his feet with a grip that surprised him. Good match, Corporal. Hayes rubbed his throat, stared at her. Something flickered in his eyes, something that wasn't part of Stone's script. Where did you learn to do that? My father, Sarah said. He taught me to grapple before I could ride a bike. Stone's voice shattered the moment. Lucky shot. Anyone can get lucky once. One match proves absolutely nothing about... And then a voice cut him off that stopped everyone in the room cold. You're right, Staff Sergeant. Master Chief Thomas Reed walked out of the back of the gym. Nobody had seen him enter. Nobody knew how long he'd been watching. His face was carved from something harder than the granite in Stone's jaw. His eyes were fixed on Stone with an intensity that could have melted steel. Once is luck, Reed said quietly. Anyone can get lucky once. Stone's smile returned. Exactly what How about 7 times? The gym went silent again. A different kind of silence this time. Anticipatory. The silence before something that cannot be undone. Reed walked to the center of the mat. Every operator in that room knew who he was. Master Chief Thomas Reed, a legend. A man who had earned his trident in 1985 and had been fighting for his country in every significant conflict since. Panama, Desert Storm, Somalia, Afghanistan, Iraq, Syria. A man who had trained 3 generations of SEALs and watched them go to war. When Reed spoke in that tone, Walls listened. You have 7 Rangers, Staff Sergeant Stone. Lieutenant Morgan is 1 SEAL. Reed's voice carried to every corner of that gym without him raising it. Seems like uneven odds to me. Stone's certainty shifted. Just barely. Master Chief, I don't think. Here's what I think. Reed turned, addressing the entire room. All of them. Both sides. We've got 3 weeks of joint training. We're supposed to be building unit cohesion. Learning to trust each other. Learning to fight alongside each other. He turned back to Stone. But seems to me there's some doubt here. Some serious doubt about standards. About capability. About whether everyone in this room earned their place. The air in the gym changed temperature. Reed's gaze didn't waver. So let's settle it. Exhibition match. Lieutenant Morgan versus your entire squad. One-on-one matches. 7 consecutive fights. Full contact. No time limits. The room erupted. Voices overlapping. SEALs stunned. Rangers eager. Sarah's heart hammered. 7 fights back to back. She'd never trained for that specifically. Never even contemplated it as a real scenario. Stone recovered fast, and when he spoke, his voice had the careful, controlled quality of a man who suspects he is about to get exactly what he wants. What are the stakes, Master Chief? Reed smiled. Sarah found that smile alarming. Lieutenant Morgan wins, you issue a formal apology. To her. To every female service member on this base. Written, public. Documented in your permanent record. Stone's jaw tightened. And if she loses, she requests a transfer out of SEAL Team 3, out of Naval Special Warfare entirely, and she admits publicly that she doesn't belong here. Sarah's blood went cold. Her career, everything she had built from the day she was 13 years old and decided that she would follow her father into the water. Everything she had bled for, everything she had sacrificed. On the table, she wanted to speak, to object, to say something. Captain Morrison's voice cut through the noise before she could. The base commander pushed through the crowd, former SEAL himself, his expression impossible to read. He looked at Sarah directly, really looked at her, taking measure. Lieutenant Morgan, do you accept these terms? Every eye in the gym turned to her. Stone smiling. Hayes still holding his throat. The SEALs uncertain. The Rangers eager, already counting their winnings. And Master Chief Reed, her father's best friend. The man who had helped raise her after her father died, who had trained her in the years since, pushed her further than she thought she could go, and never once, not once, allowed a shadow of doubt about what she could become. Reed's eyes said everything. They said what he would never say out loud in front of all these witnesses. I believe in you. I have always believed in you. Sarah straightened to attention. When she spoke, her voice didn't waver by a single degree. Yes, sir, I accept. Morrison nodded, turned to Stone. Staff Sergeant, do your Rangers accept these terms? Stone looked at his 7 men, 7 warriors, 7 combat veterans who had trained their entire lives for exactly this kind of contest. They nodded the way people nod when they have already decided the outcome and are simply being polite about confirming it. We accept, sir. Stone's eyes found Sarah one more time. Can't wait. 1 week, Morrison said to the room. Make it count. He looked at everyone present. Mandatory attendance base-wide, next Saturday. 2,000 hours. This gymnasium. He left without another word. The gym cleared slowly, Rangers laughing and joking, already dividing up among themselves how they'd each take her apart. SEALs quieter, worried, supportive but uncertain. Sarah remained on the mat alone. 7 men, 60 to 100 pounds heavier each. All trained fighters, all combat veterans, all absolutely certain that they could not lose to a woman. Reed approached when everyone else had gone. He waited until the room was empty and the sound of the crowd had faded down the corridor. Walk with me, Sarah. They walked in silence across the base in the late afternoon sun, through the cold that hadn't eased all day toward the memorial wall where the names of fallen SEALs were engraved in bronze. Reed stopped in front of one name, ran his fingers across the letters the way you touch something you want to remember. Master Chief David Morgan, SEAL Team 6, killed in action, Aleppo, Syria, March 15th, 2019. He knew this day would come, Reed said quietly. That's why he created Ghost Protocol. Sarah stared at her father's name in the bronze. What if I can't do this Master Chief 7 fights? I've never. Your dad did 5. She looked up. What? Reed's eyes went somewhere else. Somewhere years back and thousands of miles away. Aleppo. When the extraction went bad, your father got separated from the main force. Ended up trapped in a building with 3 wounded operators. He paused. 5 enemy fighters came through that door. Your dad's weapon had jammed. He was out of options. The silence held. He fought them all, hand to hand, one after another. Took 9 minutes, 4 broken ribs by the end, dislocated shoulder, concussion, internal bleeding. Reed's voice dropped to something almost private. But he won Sarah. He held that position until the helicopters came back. Saved 3 lives that day, including mine. Sarah felt the tears threatening, pushed them back hard. I'm not him, Master Chief. Reed turned to face her. His expression was something she'd never seen on his face before. No, he said, you're better. He reached into his jacket and produced a worn leather notebook, brown and water-stained. The pages yellowed with years of being read and reread and carried into places where things happened that changed everything. Your dad was a great operator, but he was big, strong, trained in the basics. Reed pressed the notebook into her hands with the careful deliberateness of someone passing something sacred. He designed a system specifically for you, based on your size, your speed, your flexibility, everything you could become. Sarah opened the notebook with trembling hands, her father's handwriting, neat and precise and unmistakably his. Page 1. For Sarah, my ghost, my warrior. When you're big enough to read this, I'll teach you in person. If you're reading this without me, it means Reed kept his promise. He'll train you. But remember, this baby girl size is never a disadvantage. It's only a disadvantage if you let them think it is. The words blurred. Sarah blinked hard. Once. Twice. 1 week, Reed said. We train 18 hours a day. I teach you everything your father wanted you to know. Everything I learned in 30 years. Everything that will help you survive Saturday night. Sarah closed the notebook, clutched it against her chest. What if it's not enough? Reed looked at her the way her father had looked at her that last morning in the kitchen, sad and proud and certain all at once. The look of a man who knows something you don't yet but is completely sure you're about to find out. Then you go out like a Morgan, he said, fighting until the end. He gripped her shoulder. But Sarah, it'll be enough. Your father made sure of that. She looked at the notebook in her hands, at her father's name on the wall, at the man who had been his brother in all the ways that mattered. 7 days, 7 Rangers, everything she had ever worked for on the line. Stone had called her a weakling, said she couldn't even hold a gun. In 7 days, she would show him exactly what she could hold. Reed gave her 1 night to process it, 1 night to sit with the weight of what she had agreed to feel the full dimensions of the things she had just put on the line. Her career, her identity, the dream her father had died believing in. 1 night was all she got. At 4:30 in the morning, he was standing outside her barracks room with black coffee and an expression that said today would be worse than anything she had experienced so far. He was right. On the mat, he said, no good morning, no warm-up speech, just those 3 words and the sound of his boots already moving toward the gym. Sarah pulled her father's notebook from under her pillow, tucked it into her gear bag, and followed. The gym was empty at that hour. Just the 2 of them and the overhead lights that buzzed faintly in the silence. Reed dropped his bag at the edge of the mat and turned to face her. Your father wrote something on page 4, he said. Read it. Sarah opened the notebook, found page 4, read aloud. A warrior who has never been broken does not know what she is made of. The first thing we must do is break you. The second thing we must do is show you that you will not stay broken. She looked up. He wrote this for me. He wrote it when you were 3 years old. Reed's voice carried something in it that he rarely let anyone hear. He said you used to fall off your bike and get back up without crying. Said he knew then that you were different. Something moved through Sarah's chest that she didn't have a name for. 7 men are going to try to break you on Saturday, Reed said. I need to break you first, so we can build you back right. Get on the mat. What followed was not training in any conventional sense. It was an education delivered through pain and exhaustion, and the systematic dismantling of everything Sarah thought she knew about her own limits. Reed called in SEALs from this rotation, fresh bodies every 5 minutes. Bigger, stronger, rested men cycling in while Sarah ran on empty. Danny Chen went first. He stepped onto the mat with the apologetic expression of a man who had been ordered to do something he found genuinely distasteful. I'm sorry about this, Sarah. Don't be, she said. Just fight. He shot in for a double-leg takedown, fast and committed, and Sarah sprawled. Her hips drove down onto his shoulders, textbook defense, and for a moment she had him stopped. Then her arms gave out. 4 hours of sleep and the accumulated fatigue of the previous week caught her at exactly the wrong second. Danny adjusted, got his arms around her waist and lifted. She went airborne and came back down on her back with 200 pounds of seal on top of her. She couldn't breathe for 3 full seconds. Time, Reed called. Reset, 30 seconds. How many more? Sarah managed. As many as it takes. She made it through 10 rounds before she vomited. Reed handed her water and waited exactly 60 seconds. Again, he said, I can't. You'll be fighting 7 men back to back with 2 minutes between each. So yes, you can, again. She got up, because Morgans get up. Because her father had held off 30 men with 4 broken ribs, and she could not let that mean nothing. She got it up and she went again. By the end of that first day, she could not lift her arms above her shoulders. Reed handed her ice packs and sat beside her on the bench while she held them against muscles that had given everything they had. My father really did 5, she asked. Not because she doubted it, because she needed to hear it again. 5 fighters, 9 minutes, 4 broken ribs before the 3rd man came through the door. Reed looked at the wall. He never told anyone the details. Just said he did what needed doing. A pause. I was one of the 3 men he saved Sarah. I was the one closest to dying. I had a tourniquet on my leg that wasn't going to hold much longer. Another pause longer this time. He came back for me when he didn't have to. When leaving me behind was the tactically correct decision, he came back anyway. Sarah stared at the ice on her arms. That sounds like him. That's exactly like him. Reed stood. 4:30 tomorrow. Don't be late. The second day was technical. Reed opened her father's notebook to page 15 and read it aloud before they started. Small joints break before large muscles tear. Target fingers, wrists, elbows, knees, quick devastating strikes. Move on. No wasted motion, no showing off. Make it fast, make it final. They drilled for 14 hours. Nothing but joint manipulation. Reed's hands became targets, and Sarah learned to see every finger, every wrist, every elbow, as a mechanical system with tolerances built in. Systems designed by physics fail under the right pressure, applied at the right angle. Your father was an engineer before he was a SEAL, Reed told her during a water break. His voice had that quality it got when he was passing something precious. He understood that bodies are machines. Machines have specifications. They break when you exceed them. You don't need to be stronger than your opponent. You need to know where they're fragile. Where is stone fragile? Sarah asked. Reed almost smiled. That's day 3. Day 3 was reconnaissance, and it was the day that changed the shape of everything. Reed positioned her in the observation gallery above the training floor before Stone's Rangers arrived for their morning session. She was invisible up there, a ghost watching, and Stone's men had no idea they were being studied the way a surgeon studies an anatomy chart before making the first cut. Your father's second rule, Reed said quietly beside her, pointing to page 9 of the notebook. Every warrior has a tell. Find it in 10 seconds. Exploit it in 1 move. Sarah watched, really watched. Not casually, not the way you watch something you've already decided you understand. She watched with the focused attention her father had taught her, the kind that emptied out all your own noise and simply received what was there. Corporal Hayes went first in the session below. He was angry, still burning from what had happened in the gym 2 days ago, and anger did something specific to his technique. It made him overcommit. Every kick he threw was 10% faster and 20% less controlled than it should have been, trying to redeem himself with power when precision was what had failed him. Anger made him readable 3 moves in advance. Corporal Jackson, they called him. Hound was a brawler. No formal training to speak of, all instinct and aggression. Every punch started from his shoulder with a visible wind-up that telegraphed it like a neon sign. Powerful, absolutely powerful, but slow in the way that steam engines are slow. You could step aside before it arrived. Corporal Martinez was a wrestler. College level, maybe, Division I. His takedowns were technically excellent, but mechanically predictable. Same setup every time. Same level change. Same penetration step. She'd seen the pattern 4 times in the first 8 minutes. The 5th time would be the one she used against him. Corporal Thompson was the most technically dangerous of the group outside Stone himself. Muay Thai trained, lean and rangy, comfortable at distance. But when he threw elbows, his best weapon, He dropped his chin for half a second during the transition. Half a second. Sarah wrote it down. Corporal Williams Tiny was the largest physical problem she would face. 6'5" and 250 pounds, with a reach advantage so significant it was almost architectural. But he was slow when tired, and when his arms got heavy, his left hand dropped. Every time, she watched it happen 4 times before she was certain it wasn't random. It was habit, the kind carved so deep by years of lifting that his body did it without consulting his brain. Corporal Peterson had MMA training, well-rounded and difficult to predict. But he hesitated before combinations, a fraction of a second, the pause of someone thinking when they should be reacting. In a real fight, thinking was the thing that got you hit. Then Stone. Sarah watched him the longest. He was the one she needed to understand most completely, and he was the hardest to read because he was the best. 12 years of boxing, Golden Gloves, All-Army championships. The kind of technical purity that came from being around the best coaches in the military for over a decade. His hands were sharp. His footwork was clean, his defense was tight. But there was something, she almost missed it. She watched him throw her his right cross in pad work. 3 times, 4 times. On the 5th extension, she saw his face tighten, just for an instant, a micro-expression of pain that his training had taught him to suppress but not fully eliminate. The right shoulder, rotator cuff most likely, an old injury that had never fully healed, managed through discipline and muscle memory, that automatically reduced the range of his full extension by 5 degrees. I didn't know she could see it. He probably didn't know he was doing it. Sarah wrote it down and underlined it twice. She descended from the observation gallery and found Reed waiting at the bottom of the stairs. He looked at her face and read it the way he read everything. "You found it," he said. "I found all of them." Reed said nothing, just nodded once the way you nod when something you've been waiting for has finally arrived. Day 4 was speed. Reed set up a series of drills that made the conditioning work of day 1 feel like a warm-up. Transitions between positions, guard passes, sweeps, submissions. Everything in sequence, everything without pause. No resetting, no starting over. If you stopped, you'd failed the drill and you started again from the beginning. "Your father used to say fast beats strong," Reed told her between rounds. "Smart beats fast, but fast and smart together." He shook his head like he was describing something almost unfair. "That's unstoppable. How do you get there? You drill until your body stops asking your brain for permission." Reed demonstrated a transition from side control to mount to back mount, flowing between positions, like water moving through different shaped containers. The same substance, different form, never stopping. Ghost protocol, that's what your father named it, because you become a ghost. Impossible to pin down, impossible to predict. They think they have you and you're already somewhere else. Sarah drilled until her muscles gave out. Then she drilled more, because Saturday was coming and Saturday did not care about her comfort. By the end of day 4, something had changed in the way she moved. She didn't fully recognize it herself, but Reed saw it immediately when she ran the drill sequence one final time before they shut the lights off. "There," he said quietly, watching her flow from position to position without hesitation. "That's it. That's what he designed. You feel it." Sarah thought about it. "It feels like not thinking." "That's exactly what it is." Reed smiled for the 2nd time in 4 days. "Your father spent 15 years building that for you. Now it's yours." Day 5 was the one she hadn't expected. Reed sat her down on a bench in the empty gym and told her to close her eyes. "What are we doing?" she asked. "The most important training of the week." He sat across from her. "Your mind, Sarah. We need to train your mind." She'd heard about visualization. She knew the concept, but Reed took it somewhere her father had apparently mapped out in careful detail across pages 20 through 27 of the notebook, a structured process for experiencing victory before you'd had to earn it, for letting your nervous system rehearse outcomes that your body hadn't yet produced. "See Hayes," Reed said, "the whole fight, beginning to end. See yourself winning. Don't summarize it. Live it." Sarah closed her eyes. She saw Hayes explode forward, saw the spin coming before it started, saw herself step inside the arc, saw his legs sweep, saw him hit the mat, saw the arm triangle lock, and watched his face go through every color it was going to go through. She felt the canvas under her knees. She heard him tap. "Now Jackson," Reed said. She saw Jackson charging, saw the big wind-up, saw herself step inside it, felt her hip become a fulcrum, felt his 200 pounds use his own momentum against him, saw him airborne, saw herself on his back before he landed, felt the rear naked choke sink in and held it through his struggle. Martinez, the sprawl, the scramble, the back mount, the grinding TKO. Thompson, the caught knee, the flying triangle, the slow purple sunrise on his face before he tapped. Williams, the footwork, the patience, the dropping left hand, the flying armbar, and the sound that meant it was over. Peterson, the hesitation, the submission lock before he understood what was happening. Stone, this one was harder. Her mind kept wanting to show her the right cross landing, the floor coming up, the world going white. She fought the picture back, replaced it, saw herself get inside his reach, saw the scramble to his back, saw the choke locked in, saw his face go slack. She opened her eyes. 7 fights, Reed said. 7 victories. Your mind has already been there. He leaned forward. Your body follows where your mind leads. Don't forget that. And Saturday. Sarah was quiet for a moment. What if I fall down? Then you get up. What if I can't? Reed looked at her the way her father used to look at her. Your father was knocked down in Aleppo, twice. Both times with injuries that should have ended it. Both times he got back up. He paused. You know why? She shook her head. Because he had 3 men behind that door who needed him to. Because the mission wasn't finished. Reed's voice went quiet. On Saturday, your mission won't be finished until that 7th man is on the mat. You remember that. Day 6 was rest, which turned out to be its own kind of difficult. Sarah swam easy laps in the pool while her muscles tried to repair themselves. Ice baths, nutrition, sleep that she couldn't fully find. She lay in her bunk at 11 at night, staring at the ceiling, with her father's notebook on her chest, reading his words until she had them memorized. Her phone lit up. Danny. Can't sleep either. You ready? She typed back. No, terrified actually. A pause. Then, your dad was terrified too, before every mission. Reed told me once. Said fear kept him sharp. Sarah stared at the screen. Her father terrified. The word didn't fit the image she'd built of him over years. The invincible man. The one who could do anything. She typed, he really said that. Word for word, said only idiots weren't scared. Smart people feel the fear. They just don't let it stop them. Sarah closed her eyes. Imagined her father lying in a bunk somewhere the night before a mission feeling exactly this. The same stomach, the same ceiling. The same conversation with himself about whether he was enough. It helped, more than she had expected. Another message from Danny appeared. Whatever happens tomorrow, you've already proved them wrong. You made it through buds. You earned that trident. Nobody can take that. Stone's trying to. Stone's an idiot. And tomorrow you're going to show everyone exactly how much of an idiot he is. Sarah almost smiled. Thanks, Danny. Get some sleep. You've got 7 asses to kick. She put down the phone and picked up the notebook one more time. Turned to the last entry, her father's handwriting, slightly shakier than earlier pages, the script of a man who knew something was coming and was choosing his words the way you choose the ones that have to last. Sarah, if you're reading this, I'm probably gone. I'm sorry I won't be there to see you become what I know you'll be. The strongest, smartest, most capable warrior I could imagine. But here's what I need you to remember. Being strong isn't about never falling. It's about standing back up. Being brave isn't about never being scared. It's about fighting anyway. And being a warrior isn't about never crying. It's about crying, wiping your eyes, and getting back to work. I love you, baby girl. Make them remember your name. Dad. She read it 3 times. Then she closed the notebook and held it against her chest and let herself feel the full weight of it. Everything he had built for her. Every page he had written. 15 years of a father's love distilled into technique and philosophy, and the absolute unshakable faith that his daughter could do what no one else believed she could. Tomorrow, 7 men would try to prove him wrong. Saturday came with bright winter sunshine and a cold that didn't care about any of it. Sarah sat alone in her room at 1800 hours, 2 hours before the fight. Notebook open on her lap, trident pin on the desk, dog tags around her neck, a knock on her door. Come in. Reed entered carrying a small cloth bag. He sat on the edge of her bunk without speaking for a moment, just looking at her. the way he'd been looking at her since she was a child, with that particular combination of pride and worry that only the people who love you most can produce. How are you feeling? Terrified. Good. Terror keeps you sharp. He reached into the bag and produced something wrapped in black cloth, worn fabric faded at the edges. He unfolded it carefully. A belt. Black belt. The edges frayed from decades of use, the black faded to gray in the places where hands had gripped it thousands of times. Krav Maga, he said. Your father earned this in 1992, wore it for 25 years, every training session, every deployment. Said it carried his spirit. Reed held it out. He made me promise to give it to you when you faced your biggest challenge. Sarah's hands were not steady when she took it. The fabric was soft with age, warm in a way that fabric alone couldn't account for. She could feel him in it, the years, the training, the love. I don't know what to say. Don't say anything, just wear it. Reed stood, and Sarah. He moved to the door, stopped with his hand on the frame. Your dad used to say one thing before missions. Every time, same words. What? Pain is just weakness, leaving the body. He looked at her across the room with all 30 years of their shared history in his face. Tonight you're going to lose a lot of weakness. At 2,000 hours, the gymnasium was so packed that the walls seemed to breathe. Every SEAL on base, every Ranger, support, personnel officers, enlisted medical staff. 500 people jammed into a space designed for 300. Captain Morris had made this official, sanctioned, legal documented. At the center of it all, a regulation fighting ring with ropes and canvas and proper lighting. Sarah entered through the side door. The crowd saw her, and the noise dropped by half in an instant, replaced by whispers that spread through the room like a current. She wore black PT shorts and a gray navy t-shirt, and her father's belt tied around her waist. Nothing else, no jewelry, no distractions. She climbed through the ropes and stood on the canvas and felt the reality of it land on her completely. This was happening. Across the ring, Stone and his 7 Rangers were loose and confident and already laughing. Hayes shadowboxing, Thompson stretching, Martinez and Jackson bumping fists, Williams cracking his massive knuckles, Peterson rolling his neck, and Stone himself catching her eye across the ring and mouthing 2 words without sound. Game over. Sarah stared back and gave him nothing. Stone, water, air. Captain Morrison's voice came through the microphone. The crowd hushed. What we're about to witness is an exhibition match sanctioned under military combatives regulations. Medical personnel are standing by. He paused to let the gravity settle. Lieutenant Morgan will face 7 opponents consecutively. 2-minute rest between each match. Fight order has been determined by rank lowest to highest. His eyes found Sarah. Lieutenant, do you accept these terms? Yes, sir. Staff Sergeant Stone, do your Rangers accept? Stone's smile was the most confident thing in the room. Absolutely, sir. Can't wait. Then let's begin. Reed grabbed her shoulders in her corner. His hands were steady where hers were not. Remember everything. Fast beats strong. Technique beats size. End each fight quick. 6 more after the first one. He looked in her eyes. You've already won all 7. Your mind has been there. Your body follows. Sarah breathed, felt her heartbeat slow despite the adrenaline screaming through her system, felt that quiet place open up inside her. The place her father had described in the notebook. The place where fear and doubt fell away and only the work remained. The referee called them to center. Hayes bounced on his toes across the mat from her, shirtless, eager, carrying the embarrassment of their first encounter, like a splinter under his skin that had been festering for 12 days. He wanted to erase it publicly in front of everyone in front of Stone. That need had made him dangerous. It had also made him predictable. Touch gloves. Sarah's hands looked tiny against his. Ready. The referee's arm went up. Fight. Hayes came immediately. The same sequence she'd visualized 500 times. The faint jab, the low kick, setting up the spinning back kick. But faster than before, angrier, more committed, because this time he was not performing technique. This time he was trying to hurt her. The spin started. Beautiful, powerful, completely committed. Sarah stepped inside the arc. Let the force of it pass over her shoulder like a storm she'd simply decided not to stand in. Hayes completed his rotation off balance, found empty air, and in the half second it took his brain to register that she wasn't where he'd expected. Sarah hooked his lead leg, and the floor took him. He hit the canvas hard. She was inside control before the echo finished. His arm trapped, her legs wrapped around his neck and shoulder. The choke locked in deeper and faster than the first time because she'd run this exact sequence in her mind every single day for a week. Hayes's free hand pushed against her. She rolled, mounted his chest, felt the choke go tighter. His face went red, then purple. He tapped. 14 seconds. Exactly 14 seconds. Same as before. The crowd erupted on both sides of the invisible line. Sarah stood, extended her hand to Hayes. He took it, letting her pull him up and rubbed his throat with an expression that had moved past anger into something more complicated. How he started, then stopped, shook his head, left the ring, one down. Reed was at her corner with water before she'd fully turned around. Drink, small sips, 2 minutes goes fast. Across the ring, Stone's face had changed. The easy confidence had developed a hairline fracture, barely visible, but it was there. Next match, the referee called, Lieutenant Morgan versus Corporal Marcus Jackson. Jackson climbed through the ropes without showboating. He was not Hayes. He was not interested in performance. He had a broken nose, healed slightly, crooked and tattoos covering both arms, and the patient predatory focus of a man who had been in real fights before any of the organized training. He walked to center ring and looked down at Sarah and said, "Nothing personal, ma'am. I understand, Corporal. Fight." Jackson didn't wind up this time. He'd watched what happened to Hayes and adjusted. He came forward fast and tight, less telegraphing, better discipline. His first punch was his best punch, and it nearly landed. Sarah felt the air from it pass her ear. She stepped inside the second one, got her hip under his center of mass, and used his forward momentum as the engine for a throw that sent 200 pounds of Ranger airborne. He hit the mat and immediately started pushing up. Tough, genuinely tough. Got to his hands and knees before Sarah settled onto his back legs, locking around his waist arms, finding his throat. He grabbed her forearm with both hands and squeezed with a grip that felt like industrial machinery. She could feel his strength through her entire upper body, but grip strength meant nothing here. The choke was locked. Jackson tried to stand. He actually got one foot under him, then the other. Rose to his full height with Sarah attached to his back, like something that had no intention of letting go. He staggered forward, trying to ram her into the corner post. She squeezed tighter, felt his pulse against her forearm. Rapid, desperate. "Tap, Corporal," she said quietly. "It's over." He shook his head, stubborn. His legs wobbled. They went down together. She held the choke through the fall, through the struggle, through the 30 seconds of pure obstinate pride. His arms went slack. His body went limp. The referee rushed in. "Stop, he's out." Medical personnel were in the ring before Stone's Rangers fully understood what they were watching. Jackson's eyes opened after 40 seconds. He looked at Sarah while they helped him to his feet, and what was in his face was not anger or embarrassment, but something close to recognition. 2 down, Sarah's legs were heavy in her corner now. Not failing, not yet. But she could feel the weight of accumulated effort settling into her muscles the way debt settles in. Reed saw it. "Stay present," he said, hands on her shoulders. "Don't think about 4 more, just the next one." "I know. Your breathing is higher than it should be. Slow it down right now before the next match." She breathed, deliberately, the way her father had taught her, the way Reed had drilled her all week. Corporal Diego Martinez, the referee called. Martinez was the one she'd thought about most during the visualization sessions. The wrestler, technical, explosive, dangerous in the clinch. He entered the ring carefully, having watched 2 teammates go out on stretchers, and his caution was itself a weapon, because a cautious wrestler is a patient wrestler, and a patient wrestler waits for exactly the right moment. She needed to give him the wrong one. They circled for 30 seconds, Martinez probing with his hands, testing distances, looking for his moment. Then he faked a jab, dropped his level, and shot in with a double leg that was technically perfect. Fast, explosive, his shoulder aimed precisely at her hip. Sarah sprawled, hip pressure down, legs shooting back. His hands grabbed air. She circled behind him as he came up on hands and knees, took his back, locked in the body triangle. Martinez was better than Jackson, smarter. He sat to his hip, immediately tried to turn, kept his elbows tight and his chin tucked. Good defensive instincts. She couldn't get the choke, so she changed the conversation. controlled his posture instead. One hand on his forehead, pulling back, creating the angle she needed. Short punches from back mount, controlled, rhythmic, relentless. 1, 2, 3, 4. Martinez covered up, defending punches while trying to escape burned energy at twice the normal rate. By 6, 7, his guard dropped a fraction. The referee stepped in. TKO, stop. 2 minutes and 8 seconds. Martinez stood without her help, looked at her with frustration, aimed entirely at himself. Your wrestling is solid, ma'am. So is yours, Corporal. You almost had me on that shot. He left the ring with his dignity intact, which was the best she could give him. 3 down, halfway. Sarah sat on the stool in her corner and could not fully straighten her arms. They ached from elbow to shoulder, with the deep, specific ache of muscles that have been asked to do too much for too long. Reed pressed ice against her right shoulder without being asked. How are you feeling? He said. Tired. Embrace it. That's easy to say. They're tired watching. You're tired doing, but you're winning and they know it. He nodded toward the Ranger's corner. Look at Stone. She looked. Stone was standing very still. His arms were crossed and his expression was unreadable, but he was very still in the way that people go still when the thing they were certain of has started to feel uncertain. He's recalculating, Reed said. He came in here with a conclusion, and you're making him question the math. Keep making him question it. The referee called the 4th match. Thompson, the Muay Thai fighter, the one she'd identified as the most technically dangerous of the group. He entered the ring with a measured respect that none of the others had brought and said, Respect, ma'am, but I'm not going out like they did. I understand, Sarah said. Let's fight. Thompson was precise, patient. He worked low kicks, building rhythm-setting patterns. A minute of careful exchange. Neither of them rushing. Both of them measuring. The crowd grew tense with the waiting. Then Thompson threw an elbow fast and well-disguised, and Sarah slipped it and countered with a hook that he blocked cleanly. He threw a knee, fast, committed, aimed at her midsection. Sarah caught it with both hands. Thompson's eyes went wide, balanced on one leg, his momentum still moving forward. She jumped. Flying triangle. Their bodies crashed to the canvas together. Sarah's legs locked around his neck, one across his throat, the other hooked behind his head, his own arm trapped inside the configuration. Thompson worked his defense immediately. Posture, pressure, trying to stand. She pulled her shin down and tightened. 40 seconds. His face turned red. 50. He tapped. 1 minute and 44 seconds. Thompson rose, walked directly to Sarah and extended his fist. That was textbook, ma'am. Textbook. You're the best striker I've faced tonight. Not good enough. He bumped her fist and left the ring with something her father had always said was the most important thing a warrior could leave with. Dignity. 4 down, 3 left. The crowd was on its feet on both sides now. Seals chanting something Sarah couldn't make out through the ringing in her ears. Even some Rangers in the back were leaning forward, no longer certain of the story they had come to watch being told. But Sarah knew the truth even as the noise washed over her. She was running on empty. Her arms shook when she raised them. Her legs had gone past heavy into something closer to wooden. She had 4 fights worth of lactic acid in her system and 2 minutes to shed it before the biggest man she had ever faced climbed through those ropes. Williams, 6'5", 250 pounds. He entered the ring and the canvas shifted perceptibly under his weight. He looked down at her with an expression she hadn't expected from him, something like regret. Ma'am, he said, I genuinely don't want to hurt you. Then don't, Corporal, just fight. His jab was the longest she had ever tried to work around. He controlled the center of the ring effortlessly, didn't need to move much, just extended that arm, and kept her at the distance where her techniques were useless. She circled. He cut her off. She pressured. He reset. 30 seconds of this 45, the crowd growing restless with the chess match. She needed inside, but every time she tried to close that jab, found her. She took one flush on the cheek and felt it in her back teeth. Kept moving, kept looking, 1 minute 30. She pressed forward more aggressively, forcing him to work his jab, more, use his arms, more burn, more of that tank that was so much larger than hers but was not infinite. 145. He threw a big right cross, fully committed, all that mass behind it, and his left hand dropped. 6 inches for half a second. the habit asserting itself exactly when she'd written in her notebook that it would. Sarah moved. She left the ground, arms locking around his extended right arm, her body horizontal, all her weight falling backward, legs wrapping around his arm at the elbow. Williams's eyes went wide with the specific alarm of a very large man who has just realized that physics does not care how big he is. They crashed to the canvas together. The pop from his elbow was audible in the front row. Williams tapped frantically, slapping the mat again and again, and Sarah released the moment his hand moved. He clutched his arm and his face was pain without apology because it was the honest face of someone who had been caught by something they hadn't seen coming. Medical team rushed the ring. Williams looked at Sarah while they worked on his arm, and what passed between them in that look required no words and needed none. 5 down. 2 left. Stone was already in the ring before the medical team finished with Williams. He hadn't waited for the formal call. He was done watching. He climbed through the ropes and stood on the canvas and looked at Sarah across 10 feet of mat with an expression that had shed everything except one thing: focus. All the arrogance was gone, all the performance, all the calculated contempt that had defined every interaction since day one. What remained was a man who had watched 5 of his best people go out of this ring and was processing what that meant about everything he had believed for the last 15 years. He looked at Sarah, and for the first time, he really looked at her. "You've earned my respect tonight, Lieutenant," he said. "I mean that." Sarah's legs screamed. Her arms felt like they belonged to someone else. Her right eye was swelling from a jab Williams had gotten through in the last 10 seconds of their fight. She could taste blood on her lip from somewhere she couldn't identify, but her voice was steady. "We'll see, Staff Sergeant." Reed was at her shoulder the moment she turned back to her corner. He grabbed her face in both hands and made her look at him. "Listen to me. One more. Just one more fight. He's fresh, Master Chief. I can barely stand. Then win on the ground. Get him down. Make it your fight, not his. I can't outbox him. Not like this." "I know, so stop trying to box a boxer." Reed's eyes were fierce. "Get inside. Take him down. Be a ghost. That's what your father built you for." Sarah looked past Reed at Stone, settling into his stance across the ring. Perfect boxing form, 12 years of it, hands sharp, footwork clean, and that right shoulder, the one she'd been watching for 12 days. She looked back at Reed. "I see it," she said. He nodded. "I know you do." The referee called them to center for the last time. The referee's arm dropped and Stone moved. Not fast, not reckless, not the way Hayes had moved or Jackson had charged. Stone moved the way water moves through a narrow channel, with purpose and economy and the absolute confidence of something that knows exactly where it is going. 12 years of boxing didn't produce wild aggression. It produced patience. It produced the willingness to wait for exactly the right moment and then make that moment count for everything. His jab came out first, testing, measuring, not trying to hurt her, just establishing, range building the map he needed. Sarah slipped it to the outside. He threw another. She slipped inside. Stone nodded almost imperceptibly, filing it away, recalibrating. He was learning her in real time the way champions learn opponents, not with their eyes, but with their entire body. 30 seconds in, neither of them had fully committed. The crowd was holding its breath. Then Stone threw a combination that arrived like a verdict. Jab, cross, hook. Sarah blocked the jab. The cross glanced off her shoulder hard enough to torque her spine. The hook caught her ear, and her head snapped sideways, and the gymnasium spun 90 degrees for one very long second. The crowd gasped, Rangers on their feet, SEALs suddenly silent. Stone pressed forward, smelled what he'd been waiting for. Another combination faster this time. Sarah covered up, blocked most of it on her arms, but a jab got through the guard and split her lip open. She tasted copper immediately, warm and metallic and completely real. "Stay with me," Reed's voice from the corner, controlled but urgent. "Move, Sarah. Don't let him pin you down." She moved. But her legs were not the legs she'd had 2 hours ago. 5 fights of accumulated damage had turned them into something that responded a half-second slower than her brain intended. And against a boxer of Stone's caliber, a half-second was geological time. 1 minute in, Stone was winning cleanly. His punches were landing with more frequency now, more authority. A jab to the body made her exhale hard. A straight right snapped her head back and put spots in her vision. He was systematically dismantling her guard, finding the gaps that exhaustion had opened, using them with the precision of a craftsman who understood exactly what his tools could do. "You're tough, Lieutenant," Stone said, moving forward with that measured patience. "I'll give you that. Most people would have quit by now." Sarah didn't answer, couldn't spare the breath. She kept her guard up and kept moving and kept looking for the shoulder. But she was too tired and too slow, and the moment kept passing before she could act on it. 1 minute 30, Stone changed tactics, stopped targeting her head, and started going to the body. Hooks to the ribs, uppercuts driving up into her solar plexus. Each one drove air from her lungs that her lungs needed to keep her legs moving. Her guard dropped 2 inches from where it should have been. Then 3. Stone's right cross came screaming in, and she saw it and tried to pull back and was simply not fast enough. The punch caught her flush on the jaw. The world went white. Not dark, white. The specific white of a nervous system that has just received more information than it can process. Sarah's legs sent a message to her brain that they were no longer available for this conversation, and she went down to one knee on the canvas with the rough texture of it biting into her skin and the sound of the crowd reaching her through several layers of cotton. The referee was there immediately, stepping between them, starting the count. 1, 2, 3. Sarah heard it from underwater, distant and muffled and strangely calm. 4, 5. Her father's voice cut through it. Not memory, not imagination. Something realer than both. The last morning in the kitchen, the coffee and the tea and the pretending. His voice low and certain and completely unafraid. "When you get knocked down, baby girl, you get back up. That's not a suggestion. That's not advice. That's who you are. Morgan's get back up." 6, 7. Sarah's hands found the canvas. Pushed. Her arms shook so badly she could hear her own joints. She pushed harder. Got 1 foot under her. Her vision swam. The referee's face swam in and out of focus. 8. Both feet. Standing. Barely, but standing. The referee looked at her with professional assessment. "You okay to continue?" Sarah raised her guard, nodded. The gymnasium detonated. Not just the SEALs this time, both sides. 500 people on their feet in a room that hadn't planned to cheer for her. Stone came forward again. His expression had changed in a way Sarah registered even through the fog. The contempt was gone. What replaced it was something more complex. The focused respect of a man who had hit someone as hard as he could hit them and watched them stand back up. He threw another combination. She blocked it. Took a body shot that made her grunt and absorb and keep moving. A jab got through, but she was already turning with it, reducing the damage. The round ended. Sarah found the stool in her corner by feel more than sight. She sat down and could not remember deciding to sit. Reed was there before she landed, ice on her eye, towel for the blood, his hands steady and certain on her shoulders. "He's winning," she said. "I know. I can't touch him. He's too technical, and I'm too tired. He's favoring that shoulder. I saw it twice." Reed's voice was close to her ear, cutting through the crowd noise. "He winced. You saw it too. I know you did. I'm too slow to exploit it." "Then stop trying to be fast." Reed turned her face to look at him directly. "You're a grappler, Sarah. Stop trying to box a boxer. Get inside, take him down, make it your fight." "I can barely stand." "Then be tired on top of him. Be tired while you're choking him. Just don't be tired while he's punching you in the face." Reed's grip on her shoulders tightened. "Your father fought 5 men for 9 minutes at Aleppo, 4 broken ribs, internal bleeding. Couldn't breathe right, couldn't see out of one eye." His voice cracked at the edges. "He kept fighting because he had to, because Morgans don't quit." He looked in her eyes and said the things she needed most to hear. "You hear me, Sarah, Morgans don't quit." The referee called time. Round 2. Fight. Sarah stood. Her legs wobbled and then found something. Not strength exactly, something older than strength. She walked to center ring with a different stance than she'd carried into the first round. Lower, more compact. Not a boxer's stance, a grappler's. She was done pretending to fight his fight. Stone recognized the change immediately. His eyes narrowed with professional interest. He threw a jab. Sarah didn't slip it this time. She blocked it and stepped forward. Another jab. Step forward. She was eating distance, paying for it with her guard buying proximity with every exchange. Stone threw a hard cross. She took most of it on her forearm and kept moving forward, kept closing the gap, kept making the ring smaller until his reach advantage began to disappear. Stone backed up, tried to reset, threw a hook to create space between them. Sarah ducked under it and grabbed his waist. Stone sprawled immediately. Good instincts. He pushed her head down, tried to disengage, tried to get back to the range where he was lethal. Sarah didn't shoot for his legs. She climbed, arms around his torso legs, driving forward, pulling his balance, throwing her hip into him while he was still processing what she was doing. Stone tried to post, to base out, to use his size and strength to simply not go down. She kept climbing, got to his back as he turned to face her. They went down together in a controlled collapse, not the clean takedown she'd visualized, but something messier and more real. A scramble of bodies and desperate grips and the sounds of two people fighting with everything they had left. Sarah ended up where she needed to be. Back mount, legs hooked around his waist, 210 pounds of Army Ranger pinned face down on the canvas, under 118 pounds of Navy SEAL. The crowd went absolutely insane. Stone started and working immediately. He was not Hayes, not Jackson, not anyone who had been here before him tonight. He was the best, and even face down on a canvas, he was still fighting with technique and intelligence. He got to his hands and knees. Sarah rode him up, let him carry her weight, let him burn the energy she was conserving. He tried to peel her arms away. His hands grabbed her wrists and squeezed with a grip that felt like machinery and meant absolutely nothing in this position. Sarah waited, patient, let him tire himself out. "Get off me," Stone said through his teeth. The first time she'd heard strain in his voice. The first time the control had slipped enough to let something real through. "Make me," she said. 30 seconds of grinding effort. Stone breathing harder now. His movements getting slower. She started working for his neck. One arm snaking toward his chin. He defended. Chin tucked. Hands moving to protect his throat. Classic defense. Well-trained defense. She threw short punches to his ribs from back mount. Not hard enough to damage, just annoying, just distracting, making him divide his attention between defending his neck and responding to the strikes. Stone grabbed at her wrist to stop the punches. That opened his neck. Just for a fraction of a second, Sarah's arms snaked in, got under his chin. Stone felt it, and his reaction was immediate and total, both hands on her forearm, pulling using every ounce of his remaining strength to break a grip that was not yet fully locked. The choke wasn't deep enough. His chin was still tucked. She squeezed anyway. Made it hurt. Made him miserable. Made him work harder to defend it than the defense was worth. 1 minute of grinding, Stone defending, Sarah attacking, neither giving. Then Stone made the mistake that exhaustion makes inevitable. Frustrated in pain, burning the last of his reserve on the wrong response, he committed both hands fully to ripping her arm away from his throat. Completely committed, maximum effort. It left his neck undefended for exactly long enough. Sarah adjusted in the fraction of a second his commitment opened. Her forearm slid deeper, crossed his throat properly now, not his jaw. The rear naked choke locked in the way her father had drilled into her 1,000 times, the way Reed had refined it, the way she had run it in her mind every night for a week until it was as natural as breathing. Stone felt it lock. She could feel him feel it. The sudden stillness of a man who has spent 12 years in boxing gyms and knows exactly what a fight-ending hold feels like from the inside. "Tap Sergeant," she said quietly, close to his ear, just for him. "It's over." Stone shook his head. His hands kept pulling at her arm, but the strength behind it was fading, the movements becoming less coordinated. Pride. The same pride that had walked into Little Creek 12 days ago and looked at a female SEAL like she was a problem to be solved. 10 seconds until unconsciousness, maybe less. His movements went sluggish. His legs stopped working. His hands dropped from her arm and fell to the canvas with the specific heaviness of limbs that have disconnected from intention. The referee was there, checked Stone's eyes, waved his arms. "Stop. He's out. Stop." Sarah released and rolled away. Stone collapsed face first onto the canvas. Unconscious. Beaten. For 1 full second, the gymnasium was completely silent. 500 people and not one sound. Then it broke. The noise was physical, a wall of sound that hit Sarah like a concussive wave. SEALs chanting her name, Rangers standing in stunned disbelief, medical personnel rushing the ring. Danny Chen threw the ropes before the Echo finished grabbing her in a hug that nearly knocked her off feet that could no longer hold her anyway. You did it, Sarah. You did it. You actually did it. She couldn't speak, couldn't find words for what had just happened. She could barely find her legs. Reed was there next, the man who had raised her after her father died, who had taken a child's grief and a warrior's potential and spent years building something neither of them had fully understood until tonight. His eyes were wet in a way she had never seen in 30 years of knowing him. Your father is watching, he said. His voice was barely holding together. He is watching, Sarah, and he is so proud of you. She let herself lean against him for a moment. Just a moment, the luxury of not holding herself up. It took 40 seconds to bring Stone back. The medics worked on him with professional efficiency while the crowd buzzed around the edges of the ring. His eyes opened slowly. Confusion first, then awareness, then something that moved through his face like weather moving through a landscape complex and fast and leaving things different in its wake. Sarah pushed herself to her feet when she saw him sit up, walked across the canvas on legs that threatened to quit with every step. Stone was upright, Rangers around him, medics checking his vitals. He looked at her when she stopped in front of him. She extended her hand. Stone stared at it. Sarah could see the war happening behind his eyes. Every belief he'd held, every testimony he'd given, every conversation he'd had in barracks and meeting rooms, in congressional chambers, about why women didn't belong here. All of it on one side of a scale, and on the other side, the undeniable weight of what had just happened in front of 500 witnesses. He took her hand, and the crowd's roar intensified to something that stopped being sound and became simply atmosphere. Sarah raised his hand alongside hers. The gesture quieted the room slightly enough for what came next to be heard. Stone leaned close. His voice was wrecked from the choke and from something else. I was wrong about everything. Sarah nodded. I know. You weakling, he said. Can't even hold a gun. His voice cracked. That's what I said. First day. I said that to you. I remember. And here you are. He looked at their joined hands, looked at the 7 men she had put down, holding 7 Rangers with your bare hands. That was your mistake, Sergeant. You confused size for strength. You looked at me and saw what I couldn't do. You never bothered to look at what I could. Stone was silent, rebuilding. She could almost hear the architecture of his certainty being dismantled and something new beginning in its place. Can you forgive me? Sarah looked past him, found the female support personnel watching from the edges of the crowd, found the women who would come after her, who would face men like Stone throughout their careers, who needed this night to mean something beyond the ring. That's not the question you should be asking, she said. Stone looked at her. Then the question is what you're going to do now that you know you were wrong. She started walking toward her corner. 3 steps. Her legs gave out completely, and Danny caught her before she hit the canvas, his arms going around her with the automatic steadiness of someone who had been her swim buddy through Hell Week and understood what it meant to hold someone up when they had nothing left. Easy, I've got you. I'm fine. You're not fine, but you're going to be. He helped her to the ropes. You're going to be completely fine. Behind her, Stone's voice stopped her one more time. Lieutenant Morgan. She turned. He came to attention, every inch of him, and raised his hand in a salute that was the most precise thing she had ever seen him do. Not the careless confidence of day one, not the performance of a man who wanted to be watched. The genuine earned absolute salute of a warrior acknowledging another warrior. It was an honor to fight you, ma'am. Sarah returned it. The honor was mine, Staff Sergeant. She made it 3 more steps before her vision tunneled completely, and Danny's arms were the only thing between her and the floor. The medical bay was quieter than the gymnasium, but not quiet. News of what had happened was moving through the base with the speed that extraordinary things always travel, which is faster than anything else. Sarah lay on an examination table while a doctor she'd never met worked on her lip with the focused attention of someone who had learned to tune out the stories attached to the injuries. 2 cracked ribs, he said, pressing carefully along her side. She flinched. Mild concussion, severe muscle fatigue, dehydration. He looked at her. You took a serious beating tonight. I know. You're lucky. Yes, sir. He shook his head slightly. Rest, fluids. No physical activity for at least 2 weeks. Doctor's orders. He paused. And Lieutenant, what you did tonight? I've been on this base for 6 years. He paused again, shook his head again, left without finishing the sentence. They gave her a private room. Danny sat with her for an hour, not talking much, just being there the way good friends are there. Reed came and went, appearing and disappearing, making sure things were handled, the way he had been making sure things were handled her entire life. She drifted in and out of something that was almost sleep. Around midnight, she heard a knock. Come in. The door opened, and Marcus Stone stood in the frame, looking like a man who had walked a long way to say something and was still not fully certain how to say it. He was in civilian clothes. His left eye had a bruise beginning under it from somewhere in the scramble. He held a coffee cup in both hands like it was the only thing keeping him anchored. Couldn't sleep, he said. Sit down, Sergeant. He sat, looked at the coffee cup for a moment, then looked at her. I've been thinking about what you said, about what I'm going to do now. Sarah waited. I testified before Congress twice, he said. Told them women would get men killed in special operations. Used my record, my experience, my reputation. He shook his head slowly. I was the most credible voice in the room against integration. They listened to me. His jaw tightened. I did real damage to real people. Women who were qualified, who should have been given chances they never got. Yes, Sarah said, you did. Stone absorbed that without flinching. She gave him credit for it. I had a sister, he said. The past tense arrived like a weight. Emily, 3 years younger than me. She could outshoot half my squad. Tough as nails. She wanted to try for combat roles when integration started opening up. Something in his voice made Sarah hold very still. I talked her out of it, Stone said. Told her she'd fail. Told her she'd get hurt. Told her women weren't built for it. And she listened to me. Because I was her big brother and she trusted me. He looked at the wall. She went to nursing school. Got married. Had kids. Seemed like a good life. And then Sarah asked, though she already understood where this was going. 2 years ago, she got sick. Cancer. By the time they found it, it was everywhere. Stone's hands tightened on the coffee cup. She died 3 months after the diagnosis. And the last thing she said to me, his voice broke. He let it break. Didn't try to hold it together. She said, Marcus, I should have been a Marine. I should have followed my dream. I let you talk me out of the only thing I ever really wanted. The room was very quiet. I've spent 2 years trying to prove I was right, Stone said. That she was better off not trying, that she would have failed anyway, that I saved her from disappointment. He looked at Sarah, really looked at her without agenda, without calculation. And then you happened. Sarah reached out and took his hand, not because it was expected, because it was real. Your sister didn't die because of your words, Sergeant, but every day you spend trying to stop capable women from serving that dishonors her memory. I know that now. He exhaled a long, uneven breath. So what do I do with it? What do you want to do? Stone looked up. Monday morning, full base formation, public apology, like we agreed. He paused. And after that, I want to learn what you did tonight, that system, ghost protocol. I want to understand how it works. I want to be able to teach it. Sarah studied his face, looking for the angle, the strategy, the Marcus Stone who had spent 12 days engineering her humiliation. She didn't find him. Why? Because the next Emily shouldn't have to face what she faced, what you faced. His voice was steadier, now finding its footing. If I can help prove that size doesn't determine capability, that technique matters more than weight class, maybe I can start to make up for some of the damage I've done. Sarah was quiet for a long moment, thinking about her father, about what he had written in that notebook, about 15 years of carefully engineered techniques that had never been designed for one woman alone. Her father had not been a man who built things for himself. He had been a man who built things to be used. Tuesday morning, and she said finally, 0600, bring your squad, the ones who can walk. Stone's face transformed. Relief came first, then gratitude, then something that might have been hope taking its first tentative steps into a space that contempt had occupied for too long. Thank you, Lieutenant. I won't let you down. See that you don't? He stood, moved toward the door, stopped with his hand on the frame, the way Reed always stopped with his hand on the frame, and she noted the similarity with a strange feeling she couldn't entirely name. Your father, what was he like? Sarah touched the dog tags at her chest, felt the metal cool and familiar and permanent. He was the best man I ever knew, she said, and he believed I could do anything. She paused. He was right. I know, Stone said quietly. I know that now. He nodded once, left. Sarah lay back against the pillow and looked at the ceiling and let the exhaustion have her completely. 7 fights, 7 victories. A career saved, a conversation started that might matter for years beyond this room and this night and this base. And somewhere a man was rethinking everything he thought he knew, because of what she had refused to stop doing when every reasonable calculation said to stop. Monday morning came cold and purposeful. 600 personnel stood in formation on the parade ground with the specific attentiveness that assembles when everyone present understands they are about to witness something that will be talked about for a long time. Sarah stood at parade rest beside Captain Morrison. Her face was still swollen stitches visible on her lip, bruising painting both eyes in colors that had no name. But she was standing. That was the only thing that had ever mattered. Stone marched to the podium in immaculate dress blues. Every ribbon aligned with the precision of a man who understood that details were where character lived. His jaw was tight with the weight of what he was about to do in front of everyone who knew him, in front of men he had led and fought beside and trained. The formation fell silent. I am Staff Sergeant, First Class Marcus Stone, United States Army Rangers. His voice carried across the parade ground the way it always had. Strong, clear. The voice of a man who had spent his life making sure rooms heard him. I stand before you to issue a formal apology. No preamble, no softening. He had decided how this was going to go. 2 weeks ago, I arrived at this base with 7 Rangers and a lifetime of prejudice. I looked at Lieutenant Sarah Morgan and saw someone who didn't belong. Someone weak. Someone who had been given a position she hadn't earned. He paused, let it sit in the cold air. I was wrong, completely, utterly, inexcusably wrong. Not a sound from 600 people. I called Lieutenant Morgan a weakling, said she couldn't hold a gun, said women didn't belong in special operations. I spent 12 days trying to prove she was inferior. His voice dropped slightly, not from weakness, from the weight of genuine reckoning. Saturday night, Lieutenant Morgan defeated my entire squad, 7 trained combat veterans, back to back, while exhausted, while bleeding, while fighting through injuries that would have stopped most men I know. He straightened. Something in his posture shifted and settled. She didn't just beat us. She outclassed us. She showed every person in that gymnasium what real strength looks like. And it has nothing to do with size. Sarah watched 600 faces, watched what Stone's words were doing to them. Officers who had agreed with him, Rangers who had served under him. Women in support roles who had spent years absorbing exactly the kind of casual dismissal he had weaponized on day one. Lieutenant Morgan, every female service member on this base, every woman who has ever worn the uniform. Stone's voice held steady because he had decided it would hold steady, and Marcus Stone did not make decisions he didn't keep. I apologize. I was blinded by bias. I let personal demons become professional judgment. I used my rank and my reputation to demean people who deserve my respect. He turned and faced Sarah directly. 500 people watching him do it. You are everything a warrior should be, Lieutenant. You have my deepest apology and my highest respect. The salute he gave her was the most perfectly executed thing she had ever seen him do. She returned it. The applause started with the SEALs, spread through the formation the way real things spread, not because someone told it to, but because it had nowhere else to go. Morrison called the formation dismissed. As the crowd broke and moved, Stone crossed to Sarah, 2 warriors in the space between what they had been to each other and what they were now. He looked at the sky for a moment, collecting something. That wasn't easy, Sarah said. No, he met her eyes, but it was necessary, and it was true, every word. A pause. I meant what I said last night about learning, about changing. I know you did. Reed appeared at Sarah's shoulder. He watched Stone walk away, a different walk than day 1, different than day 12, and then looked at Sarah with an expression that carried 30 years of watching people become more than they started out as. That went better than expected, he said. He could have made excuses, could have blamed the circumstances, the exhaustion, the match conditions. Sarah watched Stone cross the parade ground. Instead, he took responsibility in front of everyone. That's rare. Reed was quiet for a moment. People can change, Sarah. Some of them. When they want to badly enough. I know. She looked at him. Speaking of change, you said you got a call from Coronado. Reed's expression shifted into something unreadable, which meant he was working very hard to keep it unreadable. I did. What kind of call? The kind that changes careers. He let the weight of that settle. SEAL Team 6, DevGru, the development group. They want to talk to you about a transfer. The world rearranged itself slightly. Sarah heard the words and felt them land in a place so deep inside her that the ripples would still be moving years later. DevGru, the Tier 1 unit, the unit that had taken down bin Laden, the unit her father had served in for 8 years before Syria took him. When she asked, her voice was level. She was proud of that. 3 weeks. After you're cleared medically, they'll fly you out for assessment. Assessment? For what? Reed smiled. That rare, full, unguarded smile that she had seen fewer than 10 times in her life. For everything you've ever wanted, Sarah. Everything your father always knew you'd become. He gripped her shoulder. The next chapter just started. Whether you were ready or not. Sarah touched her father's dog tags. Felt the familiar weight of them, the metal warm now, from her skin. She looked at the memorial wall in the distance, at the name engraved in bronze that she carried with her everywhere she went. She had stood back up 7 times in one night. Whatever came next, she would stand back up from that too, because Morgans didn't quit. And the mission was never ever finished. The 2 weeks of medical rest felt like 2 years. Sarah had never been good at stillness. Her father hadn't been either. Her mother used to say that David Morgan, sitting still, was like watching a river try to stop moving. It went against the fundamental nature of the thing. Sarah understood that now in her bones, in a way she never had before, lying in that medical room with ice packs on her ribs and the doctor's orders pinned to the wall and absolutely nothing to do but think. She thought about DevGru, about what Reed had said, about everything her father had written in the notebook about what she would become. She thought about Stone, who showed up at her door on the 4th day of her recovery with a legal pad full of questions about Ghost Protocol that were so technically precise and genuinely curious that she ended up talking for 3 hours without noticing time passing. This sequence here, Stone said, pointing to a diagram she'd drawn from her father's notebook. The joint lock into the sweep. Your father engineered this specifically for someone with a lower center of gravity. Everything in that system is engineered around leverage ratios, Sarah said. He used to say that physics doesn't have opinions. It just has math. And the math favors the person who understands it better, not the person who weighs more. Stone wrote that down, looked at it. I've been fighting the wrong way my entire career. You've been fighting a very effective way for someone your size, but not the only way. No, she said, not the only way. He came back the next day with more questions, and the day after that. By the end of the first week of her recovery, the legal pad was full, and he'd started a second one. By the end of the second week, he could execute 4 of the fundamental Ghost Protocol sequences with the mechanical correctness of someone who had stopped thinking about the steps and started feeling the principles underneath them. Tuesday, Sarah told him on the last day before medical clearance, "You said you'd bring your squad, the ones who can walk." He almost smiled. "Hayes is still asking what happened. He's watched the footage of your fight 14 times. What does he say?" "He says he still doesn't understand how you got behind him that fast." Stone paused. "I told him that's the point. If you understood it while it was happening, it wouldn't work." Sarah nodded. That was exactly right. That was exactly what her father had written on page 31. Clearance came on a Thursday. Reed handed her the paperwork with one hand and a black coffee with the other and said, "Coronado called again. They want to move the assessment up." "How soon? 10 days?" 10 days. Sarah turned that over. Enough time to start Stone's squad on the fundamentals. Enough time to run one proper training cycle. Not enough time for much else. "I'll be ready," she said. "I know you will." Reed looked at her for a moment with that particular expression she'd learned to read over years. "There's something else." Captain Morrison got a call from the Pentagon this morning." He paused. "There's a situation developing. Somalia. I don't have full details yet, but they're assembling assets." Somalia. The word landed with weight. "How soon?" she asked. "Unknown. Could be days. Could be weeks." Reed's voice was careful. "Assessment first. Then we'll know more." Tuesday, 0600 arrived cold and purposeful. Stone's 6 remaining Rangers, Hayes Martinez, Thompson Peterson, and 2 others stood on the training mat with the careful, attentive posture of men who had been humbled and were genuinely trying to learn something from it. Williams was still in medical, his elbow requiring surgery that had gone well but left him temporarily unavailable for any training that involved his right arm. Sarah walked onto the mat and looked at them. 6 men who had come to Little Creek 2 weeks ago, absolutely certain they understood everything worth knowing about combat. 6 men who had been wrong in front of 500 witnesses and had gotten up the next morning and come back anyway. She respected that more than she could easily say. Ghost Protocol isn't a collection of techniques, she started. It's a way of thinking. My father spent 15 years building it, and the first thing he wrote before any technique, before any drill, was this. She opened the notebook, read aloud. The body is a machine. Machines have tolerances. Your job is not to be stronger than the machine. Your job is to know where it breaks. Hayes raised his hand. Ma'am, with respect, you got inside my spin so fast I couldn't track it. I've been doing that technique for 6 years. Nobody has ever gotten inside it that fast. How long before you throw the kick do you commit? Hayes thought about it. The spin starts from... He stopped. His eyes changed. From the hip rotation. From the hip rotation, Sarah confirmed. 0.3 of a second before your foot leaves the ground, your hip tells me exactly what's coming. I don't react to your kick. I react to your hip. The room was very quiet. That's what you're going to learn, Sarah said. Not to be faster, not to be stronger. To read 0.3 of a second earlier than you currently read. They drilled for 3 hours. Stone worked beside his men, which surprised them more than anything Sarah demonstrated. They were used to seeing their team leader instruct. They were not used to seeing him be a student, to seeing him get corrected, to seeing him nod when Sarah pointed out an error, and do the technique again without ego interfering. At the end of the session, Hayes found Stone near the water cooler. I've known you for 4 years, he said quietly. I've never seen you let anyone teach you. Stone considered that. I've never had anything worth learning that I didn't already know, he said. Until now. The days moved fast after that. Mornings with Stone's squad, afternoons reviewing everything Reed shared about the Somalia situation, which was developing with the specific speed of something that had been building for weeks before anyone in their chain of command acknowledged it out loud. 6 American CIA operatives, Al-Shabaab, a compound outside Mogadishu. 4 days of captivity already. Intelligence putting their survival window in direct relationship with how quickly someone moved. Reed came to her on a Wednesday evening, 9 days after her medical clearance, with the look on his face that meant the waiting was over. Morrison wants you in the conference room. Now, bring Stone. They jogged to the admin building in the dark. The conference room held senior officers and a civilian in a suit that communicated government intelligence in the specific way that no civilian clothing was supposed to communicate anything, but inevitably did. Morrison was at the head of the table. His expression was the one that commanders wore when lives were in the calculus. Sit, Morrison said. We have a situation. He laid out the details with the compressed efficiency of a man who had delivered briefings in places where every second of delay cost something real. 6 American CIA operatives, taken 4 days ago, compound outside Mogadishu. Intelligence putting them on the second floor of the central structure, minimum 12 guards, probably more by now, because Al-Shabaab had learned what happened when they didn't have more. SEAL Team 3 leads, Morrison said. He looked at Sarah directly. Lieutenant Morgan, you'll command the close quarters battle element. 7 operators. Your mission: breach the compound, locate the hostages, extract them alive. The room seemed to hold its breath. Sarah's mouth went dry. Command in combat, not just participating, not just executing someone else's plan. Leading, making the calls. Having 7 operators' lives and 6 hostages' lives hinge on whether her decisions were right. Yes, sir, she said. I accept. Morrison turned to Stone. Staff Sergeant, your remaining squad will be part of Lieutenant Morgan's element, under her command. Stone didn't hesitate, didn't pause, didn't let a single flicker of the man who had once called her a weakling appear in his face. No problem, sir. It's an honor. Morrison nodded. We launch in 72 hours. Intelligence briefing in 1 hour. Dismissed. The next 3 days were the most compressed of Sarah's life. Intelligence updates arriving in irregular bursts. Equipment checks. rehearsals on a mock-up they built from the satellite imagery, mission planning that she ran with Stone beside her, the two of them working across a table covered in photographs, in grid coordinates and contingency plans for contingencies. 3 buildings. Sarah briefed her element on the final evening. Hostages in the central structure, second floor based on thermal imaging and signals intelligence. Entry through the north wall. Demo charge creates the breach. Stack 1 through first clear left. Stack 2 follows clear right. She looked at each face. Speed is everything. They hear us coming, hostages die. There is no version of this mission where we accept that outcome. Stone asked the question she expected him to ask, sharp, technical, the questions of someone who had been thinking about the problem seriously and not just waiting for orders. Rooftop sentries. Sniper team takes them 30 seconds before breach. Synchronized shots. And if the hostages aren't where intel says, we clear every room until we find them. Nobody leaves until all 6 are accounted for. Nobody. Stone nodded. No challenge in it. No undercurrent of doubt. Just a soldier preparing for a mission under a commander he trusted. Mission night came faster than any of them were ready for. Sarah stood on the deck of the USS Baton as it cut through dark water toward the Somali coast. Stars overhead in the kind of abundance that only appears when you're far enough from city lights to see what the sky actually holds. Reed had pulled strings to be present. He wasn't going to let her do this without him somewhere close. He found her at the rail an hour before insertion. Your father stood on a deck like this before Aleppo, he said. He didn't need to explain he meant by that or why he was saying it now. Same stars, Sarah said. Same nervous energy. Reed stood beside her. He told me something the night before that mission. About fear. You told me that fear kept him sharp. That's not all he said. Reed was quiet for a moment. He said he wasn't afraid of dying. He'd made peace with that a long time before. What he was afraid of was not being good enough. Making a wrong call, getting someone else killed because he missed something he should have caught. Reed looked at the water. That's exactly what you're afraid of right now. Sarah didn't deny it. I know, Reed said. That's why you'll be good at this. The commanders who aren't afraid, who think they have all the answers, they're the dangerous ones. Fear makes you careful, makes you check your work, makes you listen to your team. Sarah looked at the horizon. Somewhere under those stars, 6 Americans were waiting, hoping, calculating their odds with the specific mathematics of captivity, where every hour that passed adjusted the numbers in one direction. What if I make the wrong call, she asked. Then you live with it, Reed said. Like every commander in history who ever made one. He turned to look at her. But Sarah, your plan is solid. Your team is ready. Trust yourself. Trust your training. Trust that your father knew what he was doing when he built you. She touched the dog tags. He built Ghost Protocol for me to defend myself, not to lead people into combat. He built Ghost Protocol because he knew what you'd become. Reed's voice was absolute. He always knew. I knew. The only person in this story who didn't know was you. He gripped her shoulder. Get your team ready. 2 hours to insertion. At 2100 hours, 14 operators stood in the ship's hangar bay in full combat gear. Sarah stood before them and felt the weight of every eye, every life, every decision that was about to be hers to make or fail to make. She activated the tactical display and walked them through every phase, every contingency, every what-if she had wargamed in the 72 hours since Morrison's briefing. Stone sat in the front row. He asked 2 questions. Both were exactly the right questions. At 2155, she said, rules of engagement, deadly force authorized, but hostage safety is priority 1. If you have to choose between taking a shot and risking a hostage, you hold fire. We accept risk to ourselves, never to them. She looked at each face. Questions? Nobody spoke. Gear up, we launch in 30 minutes. Insertion went perfectly. The boats hit the beach at Boku 45 in the specific silence of a plan executing the way it was drawn. No contact, no alarm. 14 shadows moving inland through darkness. That was absolute and forgiving. Sarah led point, Stone directly behind her, the stack following in the formation they had rehearsed until it lived in muscle memory. 40 minutes of careful movement, every step controlled, every sound considered. The compound appearing in her night vision exactly where intelligence said it would be, which was always a relief because intelligence was never a certainty until it was. 3 sentries visible through the green-tinted world of the no-Ds, bored, talking among themselves, unaware of what was coming toward them through the dark. Sarah hand-signaled the sniper team. 3 fingers, 3 targets, synchronized. She counted down on her hand. 3, 2, 1, 3 suppressed shots. The sound of them barely distinguishable from the ambient noise of wind and distance. 3 sentries who would never know what happened. The team moved to the building, stack positioned at the north wall. Sarah looked at the demo specialist, nodded. The breaching charge was placed and armed with the practiced efficiency of someone who had done this in training so many times that doing it for real felt like the logical continuation of practice. The wall came apart, not loudly, precisely, just enough. Sarah was first through. The hallway clear, she moved. The team flowed behind her like a single organism with 14 parts that all understood their function. First room, door. She kicked it and was through before it finished moving. 2 men scrambling for weapons. Her rifle spoke twice. Stone engaged the second man a half-second behind her. Room clear. Second room, empty. Third room. 3 hostiles, more alert weapons already in hand. Sarah dropped the first before he completed his raise. Stone took the second with the controlled efficiency of someone who had spent 15 years being exceptional at this. A ranger named Patterson got the third, clear, moving. The stairs, the fatal funnel, the place where every assault plan gets tested against the reality of people trying to kill you. Sarah led the ascent, slow, methodical, checking corners with the patience of someone who understood that speed and haste were different things. A hostile appeared at the top with an AK-47 rising. She fired first, 2 rounds, moved. Second floor, voices ahead, Arabic, angry, confused. They knew something was wrong. They didn't know what yet, but they were about to. Sarah reached the door, locked, heavy. Stone stepped up without being asked, shotgun already in hand. 1 round to the hinges, 1 to the lock. The door came apart, 6 Americans inside, bound, blindfolded, terrified. The specific terror of people who have been in captivity long enough to stop believing that rescue is a real possibility. And 3 guards, weapons pointed at the hostages, fingers on triggers. Time collapsed. 1 guard had his rifle barrel pressed against a woman's temple. His finger was on the trigger, and his eyes were the eyes of someone who was genuinely afraid, which made him more dangerous than someone who was simply violent. Afraid people made sudden decisions. Drop weapons, he screamed. Drop or she dies. Sarah's rifle was centered on his face. Clean shot, the kind of shot she could make in her sleep. But his finger was on the trigger, and if she shot him, reflex might complete the pull before his brain understood it was over. The woman with the barrel at her head had children somewhere. She'd said so, crying, "Please, I have children." That fact was now the most important tactical consideration in the room. Easy, Sarah said, calm, the way her father was calm when everything else wasn't. Nobody needs to die here. The other 2 guards were backing toward the window, looking for an exit that didn't exist. If Stone's element fired, all 3 guards might discharge simultaneously. The hostages were in every line of fire. No good options, only less bad ones. Stone, Sarah said, quiet, level, left target. Got him, Stone said, same level. Patterson, right target. Ready, Patterson said. Headshots only. We cannot risk trigger response. Copy, they said together. Sarah centered her reticle on the primary guard's forehead, held it there with the stillness her father had taught her when she was 8 years old, standing in a field in San Diego. The guard's hand was shaking. His breathing was audible from across the room. I'm going to count to 3, Sarah said. Then we all walk away. Nobody gets hurt. You walk out, you live. Simple choice. You think I'm stupid? His voice cracked on the last word. Young, she realized. He was young and terrified and had made a series of decisions that had brought him to this room in this moment, and he could see that it was not going to end the way he'd planned. I think you're smart enough to recognize when something is over, Sarah said. 1. His breathing quickened. 2. He made his decision. She saw it in his eyes before his hand moved. The decision that pride and fear make together when there's no path forward that doesn't feel like surrender. He started to squeeze. Sarah fired. Stone and Patterson fired at the same instant. 3 shots, 3 guards, 0 trigger responses. The hostages were screaming. The woman with the barrel at her head had collapsed sideways, hyperventilating, the barrel no longer there, her brain not yet fully processing the sequence of events that had removed it. Medical. Sarah called for the corpsman without lowering her weapon until she was certain the room held nothing else dangerous. Clear, she said finally. Room secure, medical. The corpsman moved through the hostages with rapid professional efficiency, cutting zip ties, removing blindfolds, checking injuries. 6 hostages, all alive, minor injuries only, no gunshot wounds. Sarah exhaled, let the breath out slowly and completely, and didn't allow herself to feel anything yet, because feeling things was for after, when everyone was home safe. That was what her father had always said. You save your tears for after. Let's move, she said. 2 minutes before this compound knows exactly where we are. They moved the hostages toward the stairs, quick, efficient, focused. That was when the gunfire started below. Someone on the ground floor, multiple voices, the unmistakable sound of a fight that had found them ahead of schedule. Contact, a voice came over the radio. Multiple hostiles, north entrance. We've got company. Stone was already moving. I'll take half the team and hold the stairwell. You get the hostages out. Go, Sarah said. Stone grabbed 4 operators and disappeared down the stairs toward the sound of it. Gunfire intensified below. Sarah led the remaining element and the 6 hostages toward the rear of the building. A window, 20 feet to the ground. The rope went down, was anchored, and the hostages moved one by one with the careful urgency of people who were terrified, but understood that this was the direction of survival. First hostage, second, third. Stone's voice on the radio strained in the way that voices get strained when they are carrying more than they should. Morgan, we've got 8, maybe 10 hostiles pushing up. We cannot hold this stairwell indefinitely. Copy, almost clear, 30 seconds. 4th hostage, 5th, 6th, all of them on the ground, moving the perimeter, holding around them. Stone, fall back, rally point alpha. Copy, falling back. Sarah went down the rope last, hit the ground, rolled, came up running. The team was already in formation, hostages in the center, operators on the perimeter, moving through the dark at the pace that danger and adrenaline and training produce when all 3 are present simultaneously. 1 mile covered, then the ambush hit. Muzzle flashes from a ridgeline ahead. Heavy weapons, an RPG that went overhead close enough to feel in Sarah's teeth. The team went prone. Return fire. The hostages were down, covered, not hit. We're pinned, Patterson said, not panicking, assessing. Sarah scanned the terrain, found what she was looking for. A depression behind the enemy position. A flanking route that required someone willing to move through exposed ground while everyone else made noise. She looked at Stone, who had materialized at her side, having extracted his element from the stairwell with everyone intact. Take Delta element, she said. Flank right through that draw. We'll suppress. Copy. Stone grabbed 3 operators and was moving before she finished speaking. Maximum fire, Sarah told the rest of her element. Make them look at us. They did. The suppression was heavy and deliberate, and it worked because 30 seconds later, muzzle flashes appeared from behind the enemy position, and the ambush collapsed from the inside out. Stone's element had moved faster through that terrain than she'd given them credit for. Move, Sarah commanded. The element surged forward through the kill zone past what remained of the enemy position toward the beach and the boats and everything that came after this. Then Stone's voice on the radio, something had changed in it, something that made the hairs on Sarah's arms stand up before her brain finished processing the words. Morgan, I'm hit. Right leg. Can't walk. She stopped. The element kept moving around her. Hostages still moving. Patterson taking point. The mission continuing because missions continue. Location, she said. 50 meters behind you by the rocks. Sarah turned to Patterson. Get the hostages to exfil. All of them. I'm going back. Negative, Ray, Reed's voice on the ship radio. Calm and absolutely firm. Your mission commander, send someone else. There is no one else, she said. Everyone else is with the hostages. That's where they need to be. She was already moving before the sentence was finished, running back the way they'd come toward the sound of sporadic fire that told her Stone's position was still active and still in contact. Rounds snapped past her head, one close enough that she felt the disturbance in the air. She kept running, found Stone behind a boulder tourniquet already applied to his right leg with the automatic efficiency of someone trained to treat himself in the field. He looked up when she arrived, and the expression on his face was not relief. It was something more complicated. "What are you doing?" he said, not a question, an accusation aimed at himself for needing her there. "Getting you out." She assessed the leg. The tourniquet was good. He couldn't walk, but he was stable. "Can you fire?" "Yes." "Then do that while I move us." She grabbed his vest, positioned herself, her father's voice in the back of her mind unbidden and perfectly timed. Strength isn't about how much weight you can lift. It's about how much weight you can carry. Sarah lifted 210 pounds, every cracked rib she still had from Saturday night making itself heard simultaneously. Her legs screamed, her spine screamed, everything screamed, and she kept moving because Stone had 3 men behind a door in Aleppo, and her father went back for them, and this was the same thing. This was always the same thing. 40 yards. Stone firing over her shoulder at shapes in the dark that were trying to stop them from getting to the water. 30 yards. Her vision tunneling from the effort, but her legs still moving, still putting one foot in front of the other in the automatic way that training produces when the conscious mind runs out of ideas. 20 yards. The team had formed a defensive corridor, covering fire, creating a channel through which 2 people could move without being shot, and Sarah moved through it with 210 pounds on her frame and her father's dog tag swinging against her chest. 10 yards. Her legs gave out. They went down together. Stone cried out when his leg hit the ground. 2 operators grabbed him, instantly dragging him the final distance to cover, while Sarah lay on her back and looked at the stars that her father had looked at from a deck similar to this one before a mission that took everything he had to give. The jets came, F-18 Hornets out of the dark, 30mm cannons, writing the end of the engagement in language that required no interpretation. The incoming fire stopped, permanently. Helicopters, Black Hawks settling onto the beach with the particular noise that sounds in that moment like the most beautiful thing in the world. Danny appeared above her, grabbed her arm, pulled her up. "You did it, Sarah. Mission complete. All 6 hostages alive. All 14 operators alive." He looked at her with something in his face that she recognized as the specific emotion of watching someone you love do something you didn't know human beings could do. "You did it." She let him help her to the helicopter. Collapsed against the bulkhead as the aircraft lifted and the compound and the beach and the dark water fell away beneath them. Somalia getting smaller. The distance between here and safety growing with every second. Stone was on a stretcher beside her, medics working on his leg with the focused efficiency of people who had done this before and would do it again. He reached out and grabbed her hand. His grip was still strong, despite everything. "You came back for me," he said. "That's what warriors do," she said. "We don't leave anyone behind. After everything I said to you, everything I tried to do to you." His voice was raw in a way that had nothing to do with pain. "You came back anyway. It wasn't despite everything you said." Sarah looked at him. "It was because of what you became, what you're still becoming." Stone was quiet for a moment. The helicopter banked and the stars shifted in the windows above them. "I'm going to spend the rest of my career making sure no one faces what you faced. No more of it. Not from me, not from anyone I can reach." "That's a good goal. It's a promise." He held her gaze. "I'm going to need you to hold me to it." "I know," she said. "I will." 6 months later, the promotion came with the transfer. Lieutenant Commander Sarah Morgan. DevGru, SEAL Team 6, the unit her father had served in for 8 years before Syria. The unit that represented the absolute pinnacle of what the naval special warfare community produced. She stood in her new office at Dam Neck, Virginia, and held her father's notebook and let herself feel the full weight of where she was and how she'd gotten there. Every push-up in the December cold, every night she'd stayed on when leaving would have been easier, every time Stone had tried to break her and she'd refused to break, every fight in that gymnasium, every decision in that compound, every time she'd stood back up. Reed called the morning after the transfer was official. She answered before the second ring. "How does it feel?" he asked. "Like something my father always knew was coming," she said. Reed was quiet for a moment. When he spoke again, his voice had that quality it got when he was carrying something significant. "There's a congressional hearing scheduled. 6 weeks from now. Armed Services Committee. Integration Policy Review." A pause. Stone has been asked to testify. Again. Again, but this time he's asked if you'll come with him. Reed paused. He wants them the truth, Sarah. The whole truth. And he wants you there when he does. Sarah looked at her father's name on the dog tags in her hand, at everything they represented, at the legacy that didn't end with the man who built it. Tell him yes, she said. 6 weeks move the way time moves when something significant is waiting at the end of it faster than you want and slower than you can stand simultaneously. Sarah spent those weeks doing what she had always done, working, training, building. She ran the first ghost protocol sessions at Dam Neck with 40 operators who came in skeptical and left with the specific quiet of people who have just watched their understanding of something fundamental get rearranged. Stone called every few days, not to talk about the hearing, but to ask questions about the system. Technical questions, philosophical questions, the kind that only come from someone who has stopped performing understanding and started actually pursuing it. He'd been traveling to bases, he told her, talking to commanders, quietly without announcement, having the conversations he should have been having years ago instead of the ones he'd actually been having. How's it going? Sarah asked during one of those calls. Slow, he said. People like me don't change overnight. And the people who agree with who I used to be, they're not going to change because I show up and tell them they're wrong. A pause. But some of them are listening, more than I expected. Keep going, she said. I'm not stopping, he said. I promised you. The hearing was on a Tuesday. Washington in February was cold in a way that felt personal, the wind off the Potomac carrying the specific conviction of a city that had been the site of too many arguments to be impressed by any particular one. Sarah and Stone arrived at the Capitol building in dress uniforms that had been pressed to a standard that even the architecture seemed to acknowledge. Reed had flown up, seated himself in the gallery without telling either of them he was coming, and was found there by Danny, who had done the same thing for the same reason. The hearing room was wood-paneled and formal, and full of the particular tension of a place where decisions get made that affect people who will never sit in those chairs. 12 senators on the Armed Services Committee, staff, press, gallery full of observers who had heard something significant might happen and wanted to be present for it. Chairman Harrison called the session to order with the measured efficiency of a man who had presided over enough of these to know that the interesting ones announced themselves early. This hearing will examine the integration of women into Special Operations Forces. We'll hear testimony from Staff Sergeant First Class Marcus Stone, United States Army Rangers, and Lieutenant Commander Sarah Morgan, United States Navy SEALs. He looked at Stone. Staff Sergeant, you have testified before this committee twice previously, both times opposing integration. Has your position changed? Stone leaned toward his microphone. Yes, Chairman, completely. The murmur that ran through the gallery was the sound of a room recalibrating its expectations for the next hour. Could you explain? 3 years ago, I sat in this room and told you that women would get men killed in special operations, that they weren't physically capable, that integrating them would weaken our forces. Stone's voice was level and unsparing. I was wrong about all of it. Senator Williams leaned forward. What changed your mind? Stone looked at Farah, then back at the committee. Lieutenant Commander Morgan, I watched her defeat 7 of my Rangers in consecutive fights. I served under her command during a hostage rescue in Somalia. I watched her carry me to safety through active enemy fire when I was wounded and couldn't walk. He paused long enough for that to land completely. She is the finest combat leader I have ever served with, not despite being a woman, not because of being a woman, because of who she is and what she has built. Senator Mitchell, who had the expression of a man who had read the briefing materials and already decided what he thought, spoke before Stone finished. Staff Sergeant, your previous testimony was cited extensively in arguments against integration. Some would say you caused significant harm to qualified female candidates. I did, Stone said, not defensively, not with qualification, just the plain acknowledgement of a man who had decided that honesty was the only currency worth spending. I know that. I can't undo it. But I can spend the rest of my career fighting the prejudice I helped create. That's what I intend to do. Harrison nodded. Lieutenant Commander Morgan, we'd like to hear your perspective. Sarah leaned toward her microphone. The room waited. She could feel Reed in the gallery without looking at him. Could feel the weight of her father's dog tags under her uniform. could feel somewhere in the particular quality of the silence her father listening. Chairman, members of the committee. My father was Master Chief David Morgan, SEAL Team 6. He died in Aleppo 5 years ago covering a hostage rescue until every person he was responsible for was safe. She touched the chain at her neck through the fabric. Before he left for that mission, he gave me a notebook. 15 years of his life in those pages. Techniques, principles, a system he called Ghost Protocol, designed specifically for smaller operators facing larger opponents. She looked at the committee faces. He knew I would face doubt. He knew people would look at my size and see weakness. So he gave me the tools to prove them wrong. Senator Mitchell again. Lieutenant Commander, some argue that your success is an exception, that most women simply cannot achieve what you have. Senator, with respect, that's the same argument people made about every group that was excluded before they were given the chance to prove themselves. Sarah kept her voice even. Not angry, something steadier than anger. Capability is not determined by gender. It's determined by training, dedication, and heart. There are average physical difference between men and women. That is true. But combat is not arm wrestling. It's not about who can lift the most weight in a controlled environment. It's about who can think fastest, react most intelligently, lead most effectively when everything is falling apart and people are counting on you to hold it together. She leaned forward slightly. The night I fought 7 Rangers, I was outweighed by 60 to 100 pounds in every single match. I won because I was faster, smarter, and better trained for that specific kind of combat. Not because I was given any accommodation. Because my father spent 15 years engineering a system that accounted for exactly the physical reality you're describing and then showed me how to use it. Senator Williams looked at Stone. Staff Sergeant, you previously testified that women would compromise unit cohesion, that male operators would be distracted protecting female teammates. Has that changed? Stone answered without hesitation. In Somalia, Lieutenant Commander Morgan's element performed flawlessly. No hesitation, no distraction. Her male teammates followed her orders without question because she had earned their trust through demonstrated competence. He paused. And when I was wounded and couldn't move, she came back through active enemy fire and carried me 200 meters to the extraction point. His voice dropped just slightly. Every man on that team would have done the same for her. That's what unit cohesion actually looks like, Senator. That's what real integration produces. The hearing continued for 2 more hours. Technical questions about training standards, physical requirements, assessment criteria. Sarah answered everything directly without defensiveness, without the exhausting performance of someone trying to make a case rather than simply tell the truth. By the time Chairman Harrison closed the session, something in the room had genuinely shifted. The skepticism hadn't disappeared. It wasn't that kind of hearing, but it had developed cracks and light was getting through. Outside reporters moved toward them the moment they cleared the doors. Cameras, microphones, the specific organized chaos of people whose job is to translate significant moments into 30-second segments. Lieutenant Commander Morgan, do you think your testimony will change policy? I think truth changes things, she said. Eventually, when enough people hear it and can't unhear it. Stone fielded his questions with the directness of a man who was no longer protecting a position. I made mistakes. I said things that hurt people who deserve better. The only thing I can do about it now is make sure I spend the rest of my career saying something different. They found a quiet corner near the elevators when the crowd thinned. Both of them in dress uniforms in a marble building in February, having just said things to 12 senators that would be in the congressional record for as long as the record existed. That went better than I expected, Stone said. Some of them were actually listening. More than some. He looked at her. Thank you for doing this with me. You didn't have to. I know. You could have let me do it alone. Let me carry the weight of what I'd said without Stone. She stopped him. My father went back for 3 wounded men in Aleppo when leaving them was the tactically correct decision. I went back for you in Somalia when sending someone else was the tactically correct decision. She met his eyes. That's not a strategy. That's just who we are, who we're supposed to be. Stone was quiet for a moment. Then he said, I want to help you build something with Ghost Protocol, not just training individual operators, a real program, cross-branch, documented, standardized. He had clearly been thinking about this for a while. The words came with the precision of someone who has rehearsed them to make sure they said exactly what he meant. Your father built it for you, but it shouldn't die with either of us. It should outlive us both. Sarah looked at him for a long moment. That's exactly what he would have wanted. I know, I've been reading his notebook. Stone reached into his uniform jacket and produced a worn copy pages already filling with notes in his handwriting, alongside her father's. She'd given him permission to copy it weeks ago. Seeing it now, handled and studied and marked up the way you mark up something you're genuinely trying to understand, something moved through her that she didn't have a name for. Every word he wrote was designed to last, Stone said. We should make sure it does. 2 years passed. 2 years that moved the way significant years move densely with the specific weight of things that matter, accumulating layer by layer until you look back and realize the landscape has completely changed from what it was. Ghost Protocol became a formal curriculum. Cross-branch, documented, standardized in the way that things become standard when enough people with enough authority decide they should be. Stone traveled, Sarah trained, Reed consulted. Danny ran the administrative architecture that kept all of it moving. The techniques her father had engineered in notebooks over 15 years were now being taught at Fort Benning and Coronado and Parris Island by instructors who had learned them from people who had learned them from Sarah, who had learned them from a father who had believed before anyone else did. Sarah ran the first all-women advanced combatives course at Dam Neck in the spring of the second year. 40 operators, every special operations branch represented. Women who had fought their way through selection processes designed by people who weren't certain they should succeed, who had been told in 100 different ways by 100 different people that they were in the wrong place. Stone sat in the front row, Martinez beside him, promoted now, and training others. Hayes in the back, who had become unexpectedly one of the program's most effective instructors, whose particular authority on the subject came from the unignorable fact that he had been submitted by a woman in 14 seconds in front of 500 witnesses and had been honest enough with himself afterward to learn from it rather than explain it away. Welcome to Ghost Protocol Advanced Training, Sarah said to the 40 faces before her. Over the next 8 weeks, you'll learn a system developed over 20 years by a man who believed something that everyone around him doubted. She looked at them the way her father had looked at her, the way Reed had looked at her, the way you look at someone when you can see what they're going to become, even when they can't see it yet. He believed that capability has no gender, that excellence can come from anyone, that warriors are defined not by their size, but by their heart. She paused. Some of you have been told you do not belong here, that you're too small, too weak, that this world wasn't built for you. She smiled. Those people were wrong, and by the end of these 8 weeks, you'll have everything you need to prove it. After the session, a young Marine Raider stayed behind. Corporal Elena Martinez, 23 years old, the same hunger in her eyes that Sarah recognized from mirrors. The same uncertainty underneath it, carefully hidden, but visible to anyone who knew where to look. Ma'am, you wanted to see me. Sit down, Elena. They sat on the bench at the edge of the mat. Sarah looked at the young Marine for a moment before speaking. How long have you been with the Raiders? 14 months, ma'am. And how many times in those 14 months have you heard that you don't belong? Martinez's jaw tightened in a way that answered the question before her words did. Every day. Sometimes more than once. She looked at her hands. Last month, my team leader told me I'd get someone killed. Said he'd never trust me on a real mission. What did you do? Nothing. What could I do? He outranks me. Sarah reached into her gear bag and produced her father's notebook. The original. Worn leather. Yellowed pages. 20 years of a man's love and engineering and absolute faith held between 2 covers. She held it for a moment before placing it in Martinez's hands. Read page 1, she said. Martinez opened it. Her lips moved slightly as she read. Then she looked up. Your father wrote this. He started it the day I was born, kept adding to it until the week before he died. Sarah looked at the notebook in the young Marine's hands. He never met you. He never knew you existed. But everything in those pages was written for you as much as it was written for me. For every woman who would ever face what we face. Martinez held it carefully. Why are you giving this to me? I'm not giving it to you. I'm trusting you with it. There's a difference. Sarah met her eyes. You copy it. You study it. You learn every word. And then you pass it on. That's how we change things. Not by arguing, not by waiting for a permission. By being so excellent that excellence becomes the only conversation anyone can have. Martinez's eyes were bright. My team leader is going to face a choice, Sarah said. Either he changes what he believes or he gets left behind by what's happening. Either way, he's not your problem. She gripped the young Marine's shoulder. You are your only problem, and you are entirely sufficient to solve it. Martinez stood, clutched the notebook to her chest with both arms the way you hold something you've been waiting your whole life to receive without knowing you were waiting for it. Thank you, ma'am. Don't thank me. Make me proud. She watched Martinez walk out of the gym. Watched the door close behind her. Sat in the silence for a moment with the particular satisfaction of someone who has just seen something continue that they were afraid might stop. Stone appeared from the side of the gym where he had been listening without announcing himself. That was good, he said quietly. What you did with her. She reminds me of someone. I noticed. He sat down on the bench where Martinez had been sitting. He was quiet for a moment. I've been thinking about Emily, he said, about what she said at the end. Sarah waited. I spent a long time thinking about it as a condemnation, Stone said. What she said to me. Like the last thing she wanted me to carry was guilt. He looked at his hands. But I don't think that's what she meant. I think she was telling me what she needed me to do. She was telling me that the dream was worth fighting for. She just didn't have enough time left to fight for it herself. He looked at Sarah. So I have to fight for it instead. For her. That's exactly what she meant, Sarah said. I know that now. He was quiet for another moment. She would have loved this, he said. All of it, the program, the course, you. He shook his head slowly. She would have been incredible. Yes, Sarah said, she would have been. The twist came on a Thursday afternoon 6 weeks later in a way that Sarah had not anticipated and could not have planned, for which was always how the most significant things arrived. She was in her office reviewing the program's quarterly assessment when her mother walked through the door. Not a call, not a text, not the careful measured distance that had existed between them for 3 years since the funeral, since the day Catherine Morgan had told her daughter that she couldn't watch her follow her father into the same water, and had meant it as protection and delivered it as abandonment. Catherine Morgan stood in the doorway of her daughter's office at Dam Neck, Virginia, silver-haired and straight-spined, with eyes that were her father's eyes in a face that was her own. And she looked at Sarah the way you look at someone you have missed so badly and for so long that the sight of them is almost painful. Sarah stood so fast her chair rolled back and hit the wall. Mom! Catherine crossed the room. She didn't walk carefully or with the tentativeness of someone who wasn't sure of their welcome. She walked the way people walk when they have finally made a decision. They should have made a long time ago and are done letting fear slow them down. She put her arms around her daughter and held on with the particular strength of someone who has been not holding on for 3 years and is finished with that. Sarah held on back, didn't speak, couldn't speak, felt the 3 years collapse into something smaller and then smaller still, until what was left was just this, her mother's arms and the smell of her and the warmth of someone who had known her longer than anyone alive still knew her. I watched your testimony, Catherine said finally. Her voice was not steady, and she wasn't trying to make it steady. Every word, I've watched it 4 times. She pulled back enough to look at her daughter's face. I've been trying to find the courage to come ever since. You could have called Mom. I know. Catherine shook her head. I was afraid. After your father, I told myself I was protecting you by keeping distance. Protecting myself from watching you go the same way. Her voice faltered. But watching you testify, watching you talk about him, about what he built for you, about what it means. She stopped, started again. I understood for the first time what I'd been doing. I wasn't protecting either of us. I was just afraid. I know, Sarah said. I was wrong. Catherine held her daughter's face in both hands, the gesture so familiar from childhood that it reached back through every intervening year and touched something that had been waiting to be touched. You are not going to die like he did. You are going to live like he lived. Fully, completely, making things better for being here. Mom, I'm so proud of you. Catherine's eyes overflowed and she didn't try to stop it. So proud it physically hurts me. Your father would... She stopped, breathed. He would have no words. He was never without words, and this would have taken all of them. Sarah let her own tears come, the ones she had been saving the way her father had taught her to save them for after the mission was done, for when everyone was home safe. She had been on a mission for years now, and somewhere along the way, everyone had gotten home safe enough that she could finally cry. They stood in that office for a long time, two women who had been separated by grief and fear and the terrible specific loneliness of loving the same person who was gone, together again in the place he had always known they would end up. Later that evening, Sarah took her mother to the memorial wall. They stood in front of her father's name in the bronze, and neither of them spoke for a long time. Catherine reached out and traced the letters with one finger the way you touch something sacred. He talked about you constantly, Catherine said finally. Even in the years when you were small and didn't know what you would become yet, he always knew. He built a whole system for me, 15 years of work. That's David Morgan. Catherine smiled through wet eyes. Couldn't tell you he loved you without also engineering the proof. She looked at her daughter. He gave you everything he had. I know. Sarah touched the dog tags. I'm trying to be worthy of it. You exceeded it. Catherine's voice was certain in the way that mothers are certain about their children when they are seeing them clearly. You built something larger than what he gave you, something that will outlive us both. Sarah took out the notebook, held it in for a moment, then placed it in her mother's hands. Catherine opened it to the first page and read the words her husband had written to their daughter, and her hands shook, but she held it steady, and when she finished, she closed it carefully and held it against her chest the same way Sarah had held it against hers 100 times. Keep it, Sarah said. Sarah. He gave it to me. I'm giving it to you, and when I need it, I'll know where it is. She looked at her mother. We're not keeping it in a drawer. We're not keeping it somewhere safe. It belongs with family. Catherine held the notebook and looked at her daughter and said nothing, because there was nothing adequate to say, and she knew it, and Sarah knew it, and the silence between them was the good kind, the kind that doesn't need filling. The morning of the next Ghost Protocol session, Stone arrived early. He found Sarah already on the mat running drills alone in the empty gym before anyone else arrived the way she had been running them since before he knew her name. He watched her for a moment from the doorway. The flow of it, the economy of motion, the specific quality of someone whose body has stopped asking permission from their brain. You know what I think about, he said, walking onto the mat. What? That first day, when I called you a weakling, said you couldn't hold a gun. He shook his head. I was so completely catastrophically certain I was right. You were certain about a lot of things. I was certain about everything. He stopped a few feet from her. And now I know I was certain about nothing. Everything I thought I understood about strength, about warriors, about who belongs where I had it wrong. He paused. You fixed it. You fixed my thinking. I didn't think that was possible. Sarah looked at the man who had been her enemy and was now something she didn't have an easy word for. Partner came closest, Allie, the kind of person who had opposed you so completely that when they turned around all the way and brought everything they had with them. You know what my father used to say about people who were wrong about something important? She said, what? That the measure of a person wasn't whether they were wrong. It was what they did the moment they realized it. She looked at him. You realized it, and you didn't make excuses. You didn't protect yourself. You walked into a congressional hearing and said it out loud in front of people who had used your previous words as weapons. She paused. That's rare, Stone. That's genuinely rare. He absorbed that. I'm going to keep going, he said. The bases, the commanders, the men who believe what I used to believe. I'm not finished. I know, and I want the program to outlive both of us. Ghost Protocol shouldn't be something that exists because you and I are here pushing it. It should be something that exists because it's been proven, documented, built into the system so deep that removing it would require dismantling everything around it. That's the goal, Sarah said. Then let's get to work. The 40 operators arrived at 0600, filed in, found their places on the mat, looked at the two people at the front of the room, a female SEAL commander and a male Army Ranger sergeant, the most unlikely pair in the building, standing side by side with the ease of people who had been through something together that permanently rearranged their understanding of each other. Sarah looked at the 40 faces. Every background, every branch, men and women who had fought their way to this room through every kind of doubt and resistance that the military and the culture and their own worst moments could produce. My father was a SEAL and an engineer, she said. He used to tell me that the most important thing an engineer understands is this: a structure is only as strong as the weakest point you haven't found yet. His job was to find it, strengthen it, make the whole thing stronger for having looked. She paused. That's what we're doing here. Not just training individual operators, strengthening the structure, finding every point where capability has been underestimated, where potential has been dismissed, and building it into something that cannot be overlooked. She touched the chain at her neck through the fabric of her uniform. My father gave everything he had to a mission that saved lives. I intend to give everything I have to a mission that saves opportunities. That changes who gets a seat at the table. That makes the table itself better for the change. She looked at each face in the room. You are not here because you were given something. You are here because you earned it. And what you learn in this room, you carry forward. You carry it to every place you serve. You carry it to every person who comes after you. That is the mission. She paused one final time. Let's get to work. Later that evening, standing at the water's edge where she had run in the December cold the day Stone called her a weakling, Sarah looked at the horizon and let the sound of the water be the only thing for a moment. Just the ocean and the last of the daylight and the familiar weight of the dog tags against her chest. Stone appeared beside her, said nothing at first, just stood there the way people stand when they've stopped performing and are simply present. You know what he said to me that first day? Stone said eventually. What I said to you, I remember every word. You weakling, you can't even hold a gun. He shook his head. 3 years, 7 Rangers, a hostage rescue in Somalia, ghost protocol in every special operations branch in the United States military. He was quiet, and a congressional testimony that's already being cited in 3 ongoing policy reviews. He looked at her. What did you end up holding, Sarah? What did you actually hold? She thought about every person she had carried, every mission she had completed, every student she had trained, every door she had opened by refusing to let anyone close it. She thought about her father's notebook in her mother's hands, about Martinez walking out of the gym with it clutched to her chest, about the 40 operators on the mat this morning and the ones who would stand on that mat next year and the year after that. She thought about the specific weight of legacy, how it was heavier than any rifle and more permanent than any rank. How the things you built for other people outlasted everything you built for yourself. Everything that mattered, she said. The ocean said nothing. The dog tags were warm against her skin. Somewhere in the distance, the lights of the base held steady against the dark. Marcus Stone had called her a weakling and said she couldn't even hold a gun. He had been wrong in every way a person can be wrong about another person. And she had spent 3 years proving it not with words, but with the only thing that had ever actually changed anything by doing the work, carrying the weight, standing back up, and refusing in every moment that demanded less of her to give anyone anything less than everything she had. Her father had known what she would become before she knew herself. He had engineered the proof before she needed it. He had left it in her hands and trusted her to use it and then to pass it forward, and she had done exactly that and was not finished doing it and would not be finished for as long as she was breathing. Morgans did not quit. The mission did not end. And the legacy, the real legacy, the one measured not in medals or ranks or congressional testimony, but in the lives it changed, in the doors it opened, in the women it freed to become what they were always capable of being.